Chapter 532. Initially, the city was in good condition, with all the buildings neatly built by Chi-Chi. But now, the entire city was nowhere to be seen. All that was left was a huge pit, about 100 miles deep and 40 to 50 miles in diameter. The water from the lake next to it was pouring into the pit. Judging from this, it wouldn't take long before the Six Rivers city would be renamed to Six Rivers Lake. Ha! Tens of Baichi's subordinates drew their weapons at the same time, emanating a towering murderous aura as they took a step closer to Wu Qi. Among these tens of Daqin generals, a small half had already transcended their heavenly tribulations and become heaven immortals. However, before Wu Qi, who possessed the fleshly body and magical power of a 27th-tier heaven immortal, they were just too weak. With a blink of his body, Wu Qi took a step forward and pressed his palm onto Baichi's palm. He stared at Baichi from a close distance, smiled coldly and said, "Prince of Wuan, great General Baichi, it's better if you don't draw your sword. If you don't, we can still coexist peacefully. If you dare to draw your sword, I swear I'll slaughter all 200,000 people in your Six Rivers city, and kill all the over 10,000 warriors under your command." Zhang Yi opened his mouth and was about to bargain with Wu Qi, but Wu Qi said impatiently, "I won't do any harm to your Daqin generals. In short, I'll give you 3 chances. Zhang Yi, Baichi, if I need your help, just help me 3 times with all your might." He stared fixedly at Wu Qi, especially at Ao Buzan, who had fallen back onto Wu Qi's shoulder. "You're just a nascent soul cultivator," Zhang Yi cried out in a deep voice. Originally, Wu Qi was going to reason with Zhang Yi and Baichi, explaining his difficulties. But suddenly, he realized that this was the world of cultivators, and he, Zhang Yi, and Baichi were all cultivators. Therefore, he would solve the problem with the rules of cultivators. Whoever's fist was bigger was the one who was right, the one who was the law. Explain. How could he explain anything to Zhang Yi and Baichi, who were far inferior to him and could be killed with a finger? The crops, which were supposed to have a bountiful harvest, were destroyed by a few powerful spells of Wu Qi. Not even a single grain of rice was left, and everything was buried in the messy soil. A few villages closest to the Six Rivers city had completely vanished without a trace. All the livestock in the villages, such as pigs, dogs, cows, and horses, had been ripped to shreds by a few powerful magical spells, mixing with the soil. Zhang Yi and Baichi looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. They gritted their teeth and agreed to Wu Qi's conditions. Cackling, he activated the Inferno Hell Devil scripture. Once again, a new Inferno Hell Devil infant emerged in Wu Qi's body. Dense fiend energy emanated from his body, and black smoke surrounded Wu Qi. A circle of fiend runes appeared behind his head, within which a few faintly visible fiend runes were flashing. Wu Qi chuckled and said, "Now, my cultivation base is at the peak of nascent soul realm. I am a fiend cultivator." Zhang Yi and Baichi turned their heads with difficulty and looked at each other. Baichi grabbed the hilt of his sword, feeling a little embarrassed and angry. Wu Qi laughed loudly. A white cloud shot out from under his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he was thousands of miles away. Zhang Yi and Baichi thought to themselves that even if they were not much stronger than Meng Zhang, they had only transcended the heavenly tribulation and become heaven immortals a few years earlier than Meng Zhang. Zhang Yi pointed at the mess and said angrily, "Before we came here, the 200,000 people in the Six Rivers city had spent decades of hard work to build this little foundation. This Six Rivers city could have become a solid stronghold for me, Daqin, on Panga continent, and when His Majesty comes here in the future, Daqin will be able to expand the territory and rule the world. But, look at this. Look at what you have done to our painstaking efforts." The Inferno Hell Devil infant flew out of his body, transforming into a plume of dark smoke and wheeling around Wu Qi. Suddenly, Wu Qi grabbed the Inferno Hell Devil infant and tore it into 2 pieces with a strange cry. A great amount of dark fiend energy burst out of the Inferno Hell Devil infant. Wu Qi gave a miserable shriek and cried out, "I'm finished. My nascent soul is destroyed by myself. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." Behind Baichi, an armored soldier, standing over 10 feet tall and burly like a wild boar, let out a furious cry as he pulled out a one-handed halberd and swung it down towards Wu Qi's head. The burly man thrust the halberd with his right hand, while pushing his left palm outward. A pitch-black palm thunder shot out and went straight towards Wu Qi's chest. The man's attack was clean and simple, without any sloppy tricks. Obviously, it was a skill he had tempered on the battlefield, and not the combat quality of those cultivators who only cultivated in cave abodes for show. Zhang Yi was shocked, while the corner of Baiqi's eyes twitched. This burly man, Meng Zhang, was Baiqi's trusted general. About 1 year ago, he had transcended his heavenly tribulation and become a heaven immortal. His moves were simple, but they had been personally taught by Baiqi. They were the most powerful and effective methods on the battlefield. The palm thunder was formed by gathering the resentment and the aura of death left behind by countless people before they were killed. It was called the army-breaching thunder of slaughter, and it possessed a very strong power. But how could Wu Qi neutralize it so easily? Humming a tune and flying tens of thousands of li, Wu Qi suddenly stopped on the cloud and swore angrily. "You dare to threaten this king?" Baiqi was so angry his eyes were about to crack. His right hand suddenly swung, wanting to draw his sword and decide victory with Wu Qi. Opening his mouth, under the stone-like gazes of Zhang Yi, Baiqi, and the others, Wu Qi swallowed the 2 pieces of the Yuanying and large amounts of Mo energy into his mouth. He gave a satisfied burp. He spread his hands and smiled faintly. "Actually, I cultivate a Buddhist cultivation method. It is ever-changing, and only my appearance is revealed. Fellow Taoists, you have been blinded by appearance. What the naked eye sees is nothingness. Only by having a firm heart can one reach Bodhi." Wu Qi chuckled. The purgatory demon nascent soul in his body suddenly disintegrated. The chaotic energy returned to various parts of his body, and a strange aura spread out of his body. He looked at the stunned Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said with a smile, "Now, my cultivation is at the peak of the Khanate realm." Wu Qi looked at the stunned Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said with a smile, "Look, I self-destructed my Jin Dan, but I'm fine." Hearing Zhang Yi's words, Wu Qi let go of Baiqi, took a few steps back, cupped his fist and bowed to Zhang Yi with a smile on his face. Wu Qi snorted coldly. Suddenly, a crystal-clear ice shield appeared in front of him. When the pitch-black thunder palm touched the Xian Bing shield, it was frozen into a ball of ice by the cold air before it could explode. When the one-handed halberd of the burly man was still 3 feet away from Wu Qi's head, Ao Buzan, who was lying on Wu Qi's shoulder, leaped up lazily, flicked his little tail, and sent the one-handed halberd flying far away. A large piece of skin on the burly man's palm was scratched, and blood dripped down from the wound. The chaotic energy condensed in his body, and a Jin Dan, which was based on the dark Yin water meridian, suddenly formed. Wisps of Jin Dan energy sprayed out from his body. Wu Qi smiled complacently and said, "Now, I have the cultivation base of Jin Dan." He opened his mouth, and the cold, purple-blue Jin Dan suddenly shot out from his mouth. Wu Qi weighed the chicken-sized Jin Dan in his palm, then suddenly threw the Jin Dan away like throwing a stone. Zhang Yi bowed back and said coolly, "Duke of Tianyun, the 6 Rivers city is in urgent need of reconstruction. It is not suitable to entertain an honorable guest in the wilderness. Please help yourself." Wu Qi shook his head. He really did not mean it. Although he was the Duke of Great Yen, he really did not mean to make things difficult for Daqin. Originally, with the 6 Rivers Lake as the center, over 100 miles of fertile farmland had collapsed to a depth of tens of miles. It was impossible for ordinary people to farm on such a land. It was simply an extra-large crater. Suddenly, Wu Qi let out a strange laugh. He clasped his hands behind his back and said coolly, "If you did not surround me just now, things could still be discussed. But, since you have attacked me, how can I leave so easily? In short, if you don't want to die, you, Baiqi, will have to bow your head and obey my orders 3 times. If you agree, I'll leave immediately. If not, I'll strike right away and kill all the living beings in the 6 Rivers city." With a cold snort, Wuqi dragged Baiqi and spun rapidly in all directions. Casually, he waved his fingers and shattered the weapons held in the hands of these captains. These weapons were all excellent magical treasures and energies, but before Wuqi's strong fleshly body, they were as fragile as tofu. But, with Wuqi's current strength, how could Baiqi, who had just stepped into the realm of heaven immortal, be a match for him? Wuqi's palm did not budge. No matter how hard Baiqi struggled, he could not move his palm at all. Wuqi stared coldly at Baiqi and warned again, "If you dare to strike, I'll kill all the living beings in the Six Rivers City." "Baiqi, don't be so shameless." Just as he finished his last sentence, Wuqi suddenly burst into a loud laughter. He turned to Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said, I've made a mistake again. Why should I reason with you? Old fogey Zhang Yi, Baiqi, you boorish fellows, I've destroyed your Six Rivers City. What can you do to me? I've intentionally lured Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai to the Six Rivers City. What can you do to me? Wuqi grinned and gave the current Six Rivers City a glance. He would not have known if he did not look at it, but when he did, he felt a little embarrassed. Looking at Zhang Yi in surprise, Wuqi smiled bitterly and said, "Old Mr. Zhang Yi, what are you doing? Over the past few months, we've been on the same boat through thick and thin. It took us a lot of effort to escape from the hands of those two gold immortals. Don't tell me it is the tradition of Daqin to burn the bridge after crossing the river." Smiling bitterly, Wuqi spread his arms and said helplessly, "I have no other choice. In order to deal with those two gold immortals, I have no choice but to use such a heavy attack. I don't have a single coin with me now, and I can't afford the compensation. What do you think?" With Wuqi's current arm strength, with just a casual wave of his hand, the Jin Dan flew dozens of miles away. With a thought in Wuqi's mind, the Jin Dan smashed into a small dirt mound and exploded. The violent force of the explosion destroyed everything within tens of miles, leaving behind a large pit several miles deep in the ground. With the promise of help from Zhang Yi and Baiqi, as well as Lao Ai and Duke of Longyang, who had boarded Wuqi's pirate ship, and Su Qin, who was guarding Anhui City, Wuqi was in a good mood. He felt that everything before his eyes was so pleasing to the eye, and he could not be happier. After witnessing everything, Zhang Yi suddenly cried out, "Enough! We are no match for Duke of Tianyun." Zhang Yi clenched his jaws tightly, causing a strand of his beard to twitch. He pointed in the direction of the Six Rivers City and bellowed, "What are you doing? Going through thick and thin together? Helping each other in the same boat? Bullshit." Even Zhang Yi, who had always been gentle and elegant, could not help but curse. If not for you, would the Six Rivers City attract those two calamities? If not for you, would the Six Rivers City end up like this? Zhang Yi and Baiqi's faces turned extremely unsightly, especially Baiqi, whose body was trembling with anger. 3 chances to bow down and obey his orders. How could they, who were proud and arrogant, swallow their pride? He was lost. Where was this Six Rivers City located on Pangu continent? How could he return to the territory of Zhong province? Chapter 533. The surface area of Pangu continent was simply too vast. After leaving the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, for fear that Patriarch Miaoing might be able to find out his whereabouts, Wuqi chose a random direction and flew at random. He had changed directions a few times along the way, and as a result, he had no idea where he was now. When he was in the Six Rivers City, Wuqi found out that it was under the jurisdiction of Pang Province, a 9th-grade province that had just been established not long ago. As for the places around Pang Province, the common people in the city could not tell them. Just a county under Pang Province alone had a circumference of 1 million miles. Perhaps, those common people would not be able to walk out of a county for the rest of their lives. So, why would they care about the situation in those bigger provinces? Where exactly am I? Smiling bitterly, Wuqi raised his head and looked at the sun. He could not even tell which direction he was in Zhong province. He closed his eyes and meditated, carefully communicating with the few celestial fiend puppets. The spiritual connection between them was still very clear, but Wu Qi only knew that he could communicate with them, but he could not sense where they were. This was also because his cultivation base was too weak. If he had the cultivation base of a gold immortal, his powerful divine will would be more than enough to determine the relationship between him and his puppets. Left with no other choice, Wu Qi touched his empty waist pouch and suddenly thought of going back to Six Rivers City to rob Zhang Yi and Bai Qi. But, when he thought about it, he realized that he had just forced them to agree to help him with all their might 3 times in the future. If he went back and robbed them now, it would be a little unreasonable. After pondering for some time, Wu Qi stamped his foot, gritted his teeth, and said, "Well, I'll just find a city and ask for some information first." There are always teleportation formations connecting the cities of Deyu province. When the time comes, I'll just need to gather some traveling expenses and return to Zhong province. He snorted coldly and retracted the chaotic energy in his body. Intentionally or unintentionally, he emanated a wisp of the aura of the true body of heaven and earth scripture. With that, Wu Qi pretended to be an ordinary human who had practiced some basic cultivation techniques of the human race, and began to run wildly in the wilderness. As he was cultivating the true body of heaven and earth scripture, when Wu Qi was running at top speed, his speed was comparable to an ordinary sword beam. And, when he purposely exercised some magnetic force to push his body forward, his speed was at least 100 times faster than an ordinary sword beam. Amidst the boundless wilderness, a long dragon formed from sand and dust kept stretching forward. Wu Qi was waving his arms and running crazily across the wilderness, as if he had lost his mind. After running for a whole month, he finally left the territory of Feng province and entered the territory of Mi province, an 8th-grade province next to it. The population of this province was slightly denser than that of Feng province. As soon as he entered the territory, he came across a few small cities inhabited by the human race. Wu Qi scanned these cities with his divine will. Apart from dozens of powerful human warriors, the rest were all ordinary mortals who farmed and made their living. There was nothing valuable in these cities, and there were no cultivators passing by. Therefore, Wu Qi was too lazy to get close to these cities, so he just ran straight past them. Days went by, and Wu Qi kept running in the wilderness. As he ran, every time he stepped on the ground, his feet would sink heavily into the ground. The purple mist around him was rocking, attracting and intertwining with the purple mist that rose from Panga continent. Gradually, Wu Qi had an illusion that he had become one with Panga continent, and that his heartbeat and the flow of his blood were fused with the continent. On this particular day, on the 7th day after he entered the Mi province, while he was still running, he suddenly lifted his foot up, and when it touched down, he stomped forcefully on an underground energy vein. The energy vein trembled, and Wu Qi felt numb all over his body. The frequency of his heartbeat and the vibration of his muscles coincided with that of the energy vein. His body suddenly turned blurry, and the scenery before his eyes changed abruptly as countless lights and shadows flashed past. His body became heavy, and then light. Suddenly, Wu Qi realized that he had come before a lofty mountain. He tried his best to extend his divine will and look behind him. After a moment of calculation and comparison, he found that he had traveled nearly 1 billion miles with just one step. The distance was even greater than the space he could travel by teleporting with his strongest magic power. This is... Wu Qi was struck dumb. What was the origin of such a strange situation? Suddenly, various techniques of the true body of heaven and earth scripture rushed out from his spiritual ocean. Wu Qi hurriedly flipped through some of them, and found that it was a mystic art in the true body of heaven and earth scripture that was similar to the teleportation divine ability of immortals. It allowed him to move quickly by borrowing the power of the underground energy veins on Panga continent, a divine ability unique to the experts of the human race, the Kwafu chasing the sun step. With the help of the natural energy veins on Panga continent, as well as the connection between the underground energy veins, the supreme experts of the human race could cross the territory of thousands or even tens of thousands of provinces with just one step, traveling from one end of Deyu dynasty to the other in a flash. Teleportation divine ability of immortals would consume their own immortal energy and energy essence, but a divine ability like the Kwafu chasing the sun step could travel completely by borrowing the power of the underground energy veins on Pangu continent, and would not consume any energy at all. As long as one was familiar with the direction of the underground energy veins on Pangu continent, as well as the condition of the energy veins under Baju province, one could travel accurately from one province to another with the Kwafu chasing the sun step. This was also one of the reasons why those truly formidable immortals were so afraid of the experts of the human race. As long as one was on Pangu continent, no matter how formidable an immortal was, he could never escape from the pursuit of the experts of the human race. After hastily reading through the essence of the Kwafu chasing the sun step, Wuqi could not help but twitch his lips. Fairy Xian Dai and Reverend Li Yang were really lucky. Perhaps, the reason why they were able to escape from King Baishan and King Zhangqiu's pursuit was related to Fairy Xian Dai's marvelous divine ability, the true form of energy treading through air. Otherwise, how could they have escaped from the endless pursuit of the human experts? Wonderful. As long as I can find the complete map of Pangu continent, doesn't that mean I can travel through it at will? Wuqi grinned, unable to restrain the joy in his heart. Suddenly, he threw his head back and laughed uproariously. According to the Kwafu chasing the sun step, among thousands of human warriors, only one or two could comprehend and master this divine ability. However, Wuqi had obtained this mystic art after running for a long distance. While laughing delightfully, Wuqi took a careful step forward. His body flickered again as he moved 3 million miles forward along a small energy vein under the ground, moving from the lofty mountain to another lofty mountain in the distance. This lofty mountain turned out to be an excellent cave abode. Using his chaotic divine eyes, Wuqi peered into the ground and saw several dozens of energy veins intertwining at the foot of the mountain like giant dragons. Surging energies gathered together, transforming into pale purple immortal energy that rose up into the sky. Without any processing, this place was an excellent cave abode for immortals. But when Wuqi spread his divine sense out, he found that just outside the lofty mountain stood a large city of the human race of Diyu. More than 100,000 warriors were living in the city. It was a first-class city. Perhaps no immortal would dare to build a cave abode here, unless he had the confidence to swallow the city in one gulp. Otherwise, who would dare to build a cave abode under the noses of the officials of the human race? Wuqi could not help but shake his head as he glanced at the spirit flowers and rare herbs that stretched across the mountains. It was a pity that such a blessed land would be wasted. Exercising his chaotic divine eyes, Wuqi followed the direction of the energy veins, and before long, he came to a small hill less than 3 miles tall. He glanced around, then waved both hands and performed a minor divine ability of heavenly laws. His body grew 3 miles tall as well, then he grabbed the hill and pulled it up. A muffled boom rang out as the hill was uprooted. Wuqi clasped his palms together, unleashing an enormous magnetic force that crushed all the rocks on the hill into powder. With a wave of his hand, all the immortal stones found in an excellent energy stone vein, which was 3 miles tall and tens of miles in circumference, shot out into Wuqi's sleeve. In those ordinary energy stone veins, one immortal stone could be formed from hundreds of thousands or even millions of energy stones. However, there was no trace of ordinary energy stones in the energy stone vein on this hill. Instead, it was filled with immortal stones the size of fists. Wuqi counted and found out that there were a total of 1,200 immortal stones flying into his sleeve. With these immortal stones, as long as he could find a province city of the human race, he would be able to return to Zhong province through the teleportation formation. After collecting all the immortal stones, Wuqi absorbed all the rocks and dust from the shattered hill into his body. The chaotic energy rolled up the rocks and dust, turning them into chaotic energy that spread throughout Wuqi's body. This 7 foundation elevating technique does have some benefits, as I can absorb and refine everything under the heaven. How many energy stones and immortal stones have I saved? Wuqi could not help but laugh. If I were to establish my own sect now, I wouldn't have to fight with my disciples for energy stones and immortal stones. While he was feeling complacent, a thunderclap suddenly came from behind a mountain not far away. In just a blink of an eye, over a dozen sword beams flew out from behind the mountain. At the forefront were 3 purple sword beams, which originated from the same sect, and behind them were 13 colorful sword beams that belonged to different sections. Among the 3 fleeing sword lights in front of him, 2 of them were dim and flickering. Clearly, they were heavily injured. Initially, the mountain was still over 100 miles away from Wuqi, but in just the span of a few breaths, the sword beams had reached a place less than 3 to 5 miles away from Wuqi. Among the 3 purple sword lights that were fleeing ahead, a woman's voice suddenly rang out from the undamaged sword light, "Fellow Taoist in front, please leave quickly. The ones chasing after you are Myriad Demons Cave's demon cultivators." Demon cultivators from Myriad Demon's Den? Are they very powerful? His divine will swept across the 13 sword beams. The strongest among them only had a cultivation base of peak stage nascent soul realm. As for the 3 fleeing sword beams, they were all early stage nascent soul realm cultivators. Suddenly, a hoarse and unpleasant voice rang out from behind, 3 little girls, you can't even take care of yourselves, and you still want to save others? Hee, the great king's birthday is just around the corner, and he must capture you as a birthday gift. Don't run, you can't run away. Ha ha ha. The demon cultivators in the 13 sword beams roared with laughter at the same time, and they suddenly sped up and rushed toward Wuqi. Wuqi's face darkened. He pointed a finger out, and a dark magnetic force enveloped the 13 sword beams. Miserable howls rang out as the 13 sword beams were dragged by a tremendous gravitational force, completely out of the control of the demon cultivators, and plunged headlong into a mountain in the distance. A series of bone-cracking noises echoed out, and the 13 demon cultivators who were laughing wildly just a moment ago had their bones broken and tendons torn, and even their nascent souls were shattered. The 3 fleeing purple sword beams halted hesitantly. Before long, they faded away, and 3 girls clad in long purple dresses landed in front of Wuqi. They cupped their fists and bowed deeply to Wuqi. We are Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling. Thank you for saving our lives, Senior. Wuqi raised his head and gave the 3 girls a glance, and could not help but praise in his heart, what a beautiful pair of twin sisters. Chapter 534. Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling were 3 twin sisters born from the same mother. Each of them was as beautiful as a pearl, and they had an excellent appearance and temperament. Under the scrutiny of Wuqi's chaotic divine eyes, he found that all 3 of them had the best potential in cultivation. However, they could feel an immense pressure that made their hearts palpitate vaguely in Wuqi's eyes. Under Wuqi's stern gaze, they did not even dare to raise their heads. The terrible pressure made them unable to move, making them feel like frogs who had seen a venomous snake. Apart from trembling and waiting for the judgment of fate, they did not even dare to think of running away. Just as the 3 girls were screaming in their minds that they were doomed this time, Wuqi nodded at them and said coolly, "Oh, that's a nice name." After that, Wuqi transformed into a beam of dark light and flew towards the mountain where the demon cultivators had been killed. He bent his back and began to search the ground. Such a strange behavior surprised the 3 women. For a moment, their curiosity even overcame their reverence for Wuqi. They quickly rode on their flying swords and flew after Wuqi. Luo Shui asked curiously, "What are you looking for, Senior?" Wuqi asked as he stooped down to search the mountain. Not long after that, he managed to find 12 storage bags and a storage ring from the pile of blood and flesh scattered all over the ground. He poured out all the contents of the storage pouches that were covered with flesh and blood. Bits and pieces of spirit stones, medicinal herbs, talismans, and magical treasures were scattered all over the ground. Smacking his lips in disappointment, Wuqi cursed, "Are the demon cultivators from the Myriad Demons Cave so poor?" 12 storage bags contained only about 1,000 lower-grade energy stones, 50 middle-grade energy stones, and only 3 upper-grade energy stones. Although the quality of the herbs was pretty good, and they had been preserved well, it was a pity that most of their energy had leaked out because of the poor preservation method. As for the talismans and magical treasures, their quality was so poor that Wuqi did not even have the interest to give them a second glance. The girls were struck dumb. How could a senior expert who had killed 13 formidable enemies in one fell swoop come here to pick up trash? But looking at the things on the ground, the three women couldn't help but feel excited. These things really couldn't be considered as broken, at least for them. Even a low-grade spirit stone was very attractive. However, since Wu Qi didn't say anything, they didn't dare to act rashly. Wu Qi then cast his divine sense into the ferocious-looking storage ring, which was a white bone ring with a wolf's head inlaid on it. As soon as his spiritual consciousness entered, Wu Qi could not help but feel disappointed. In any case, it was a storage ring, but the storage space inside was only the size of 3 houses, which was about the same level as an ordinary storage bag. Moreover, the messy things inside could not enter the eyes of the current Wu Qi. But now that Wu Qi had nothing valuable with him, it was better to have a storage ring that looked like a piece of trash than nothing. He sighed and put the storage ring on his finger, then threw out all the miscellaneous items inside. After that, he took out 1,200 immortal stones from under his sleeve and shoved them into the ring. He raised his chin at the girls and said with a wry smile, "There's nothing good here. Take a look and see if you can use these trash." Luo Shui was struck dumb. She stared at Wu Qi in astonishment and asked, "Senior, are you going to give us all these things?" Wu Qi nodded indifferently and said, "They are just some trash. Take whatever you can use." Although Wu Qi was a 27th tier heaven immortal now, his actual overall strength had exceeded the limit of his cultivation base. These were energy stones, talismans, and flying swords, which were only useful to cultivators below the nascent divinity realm. As the saying went, it was difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. As Wu Qi was used to being extravagant, he naturally had a higher standard. The girls were overjoyed. After bowing and thanking Wu Qi, they ran out and picked up all the things that Wu Qi regarded as trash, including the 12 storage bags that Wu Qi had discarded. Even the fragments of the flying swords that were smashed into smithereens on the cliff were collected by them and stored in their storage pouches. Wu Qi looked at the girls with a puzzled expression. He frowned and asked, "Are you itinerant cultivators from Mi province?" The girls were cleaning up the battlefield excitedly. When they heard Wu Qi's question, they quickly rose to their feet and answered respectfully, "Yes, we are from Luo clan in Mi province." Luo clan is the largest immortal cultivator clan in Mi province. If Luo clan is the largest immortal cultivator clan in Mi province, why are you interested in these trash? Asked Wu Qi in astonishment. Wu Qi shook his head and said, "This place is filled with treasures. You can find countless energy stones and immortal stones just by digging a few ore veins, and the ground is filled with spirit herbs and rare herbs. I believe they are much better than these trash, don't you think?" Luo Shui stared at Wu Qi in astonishment. She shook her head and said, "You may not know this, senior. With your divine abilities and magical power, it is only natural that you would not be interested in these things. Although Luo clan is known as the #1 immortal cultivator clan in Mi province, under the pressure from the government of Diyu, we have no fixed residence, not even a fixed territory. Although there are treasures everywhere, how could we dare to mine them at will?" Wu Qi finally understood. The so-called largest immortal cultivator clan in Mi province was actually a vagrant clan that wandered around the world. He reckoned that the government of Mi province must have dealt a severe blow to the immortal cultivators, and that was why they ended up in such a situation. Wu Qi's eyes flickered as he stared at the girls. He frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Do you know the situation in Mi province?" Luo Shui bowed hastily and said, "The three of us have always been cultivating in seclusion, so we do not know much about Mi province. If senior has any questions, the seniors of Luo clan are the ones who know the most about Mi province." Wu Qi nodded and said, "Well then, I'll pay a visit to Luo clan." He used his divine will to scan the city beyond the mountain. The officials in the city should know what Wu Qi wanted to know, but Wu Qi did not want to deal with the officials of Diyu for the time being. Who knew if King Baishan and King Zhangqiu's men were in the city? Even though Wu Qi had restored his original appearance and formed his chaotic spirit body, allowing him to escape from the surveillance of the almighty experts, he did not want to cause any trouble for no reason. The girls were both surprised and delighted when they heard that Wuchi was going to visit Luo clan. They raised their heads and gave Wuchi a glance, then hastily packed up all their belongings. After that, they led Wuchi away from the mountain excitedly, but with a worried look on their faces. Along the way, Wuchi chatted with the girls. Only then did he find out why they came to this mountain, and that it had something to do with him. A few years ago, not long after Wuchi joined Myriad Immortal Alliance, he received a mission with a huge reward from the Alliance's medallion. The elders of Myriad Immortal Alliance had offered him an astronomical reward of contribution points and various immortal items for over 100 spirit herbs, the most important of which was the Ganoderma Immortal Liquid. It had been a long time since then, and there were still 18 spirit herbs that had not been collected. Supremacy 3 Flame had already submitted the most difficult pill, the Ganoderma Immortal Liquid, but there were still 18 spirit herbs missing. Over the past few years, Myriad Immortal Alliance had gradually increased the reward for the 18 spirit herbs, and now, the reward for any of them had reached an astonishing level. The Luo clan was disturbed by the huge reward. Although they knew that Mi province was trying its best to suppress immortal cultivators, for the sake of the reward, the clan leader of Luo clan, who was also the grandfather of the girls, had decided to mobilize all the members of the clan to search for the 18 spirit herbs in the nearby mountains. As long as they could find one of them, the Luo clan would be reborn, and they would no longer have to fear the suppression from the officials of Mi province. Perhaps, they would even be able to establish a sect and base in Mi province in the future. That was the reason why the three girls came to this lofty mountain and bumped into a group of demon cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Cave. They wanted to capture the girls alive and offer them to the Demon King of the Myriad Demon's Cave as a birthday gift. The three girls fought with them, and as a result, Luo Yu and Shui Ling were wounded. The three girls had no choice but to flee on their flying swords. If Wuchi had not come to their rescue, they would have been captured by those demons. From the girls, Wuchi also learned that the Myriad Demon's Cave was the largest group of demon cultivators in Mi province, an organization similar to a bandit stronghold. The Demon King of the Myriad Demon's Cave, the Black Wind King, was the leader of this stronghold. He had gathered several thousand demon cultivators and occupied a mountain as their king. It was said that the Black Wind King had a powerful backer behind him. Therefore, the officials of Mi province almost turned a blind eye to his Myriad Demon's Cave. Over the years, the officials of Mi province had been cracking down on the Luo clan and other powers, but the Myriad Demon's Cave had never been affected. After listening to the girls, Wuchi could not help but laugh. The officials of Mi province were the kind of people who bullied the weak and feared the strong. They would not provoke those who had powerful backers behind them, and they only pestered itinerant cultivator clans like the Luo clan. Not only would they be rewarded with a meritorious service, but they would also not provoke the real almighty experts to attack them. While chatting, the four of them flew out of the lofty mountain. After flying for several hundred miles along a river valley outside the mountain, a deep valley came into sight. Before the valley, which was sandwiched between two mountains, several dozens of pine trees could be seen growing on the cliffs, and a few white crane nests were built on top of the pine trees. However, there were no cranes in the nests. Instead, there were two skinny men lying in the nests, poking their heads out and glancing around. Are they the scouts sent by the Luo clan? Wuchi shook his head. Apparently, the overall strength of the Luo clan was not very strong, and they looked like birds that were easily frightened by the mere twang of a bowstring. The cultivation base of the two men was very weak as well. They were only at the early stage Jin Dan realm, which made them suitable to serve as scouts. Riding on the sword beams, the three girls brought Wuchi straight to the valley. When they passed by a few bird nests, they greeted the two skinny men who lived in them. Judging from the way they addressed the two men, they were their uncles, but their cultivation base was far weaker than the girls. After flying for tens of miles along the twisting and winding valley, Wuchi was surprised to find that he did not see a single warning formation or restrictive spell along the way. He could not help but shake his head. It seemed the Luo clan was not an expert in the Tao of formations. But, as a cultivator clan, they did not even deploy a single formation near their base. Wu Qi was very surprised that the Luo clan could survive until now. They flew out of the deep valley and came to a small valley in front of them. Dozens of wooden buildings of different sizes were scattered messily in the valley. The girls breathed out a sigh of relief when they arrived at the valley. They cheered together, "Grandpa, we have an honorable guest." Just as they shouted, a beam of white light flew out from one of the wooden buildings in the middle of the valley. A white-clothed man, who looked 70 to 80% male, but was pretending to be a gentleman, came up to the girls with a smile on his face. When the white-clothed man saw Wu Qi, his face fell instantly. He pointed a finger at Wu Qi and cried out, "Sisters, who is this man? How could you bring a stranger into the valley?" Wu Qi sighed. Trouble had come knocking on his door again. Chapter 535. His cultivation base was mid-stage nascent soul realm, and he was practicing a fire elemental cultivation technique. He used the yin energy of virgins as firewood, and his own nascent soul as the furnace to forge a acquired true flame. The white robe he wore was a lower-grade magical treasure, and the flying sword he used was an ordinary flying sword forged from metal, with 3 simple fire talismans attached to it. The power of the flying sword was very weak. Through the chaotic divine eyes, Wu Qi could see everything about this young man. He was someone who could not even be considered as an ant. All of a sudden, Wu Qi had this strange illusion. He sensed the enormous power in his body, and compared it to the pitiful power in the young man's body, which was thousands of times weaker than his in both quantity and quality. Wu Qi could not help but shake his head. He was indeed an existence who could not even be considered as an ant. Wu Qi could kill a large number of mid-stage nascent soul cultivators with a single breath, and he did not even have the mood to be angry with him. No wonder those heaven immortals and gold immortals had the same attitude towards cultivators. They could kill ordinary cultivators without feeling the slightest bit of guilt. No wonder they could still maintain their state of mind despite killing countless people, and could still comprehend the great Tao of heaven and earth. They did not think that killing cultivators was a sin, so why would they feel guilty? Why would their state of mind be unstable? Wu Qi turned to look at Luo Shui and said coolly, "Miss Luo Shui, please ask the patriarch of Luo clan to come out. I'll leave after asking him a few questions." Upon hearing Wu Qi's words, the young man twitched his nose, rolled his eyes, and put on a posture that said, "You want to leave? Do you think it will be so easy? What is your name? Which sect are you from? What is your purpose in coming to me province? Why did you sneak into this place by trying to get close to the 3 sisters? Men, capture him alive and send him to the dungeon for strict supervision. This is ridiculous." Ao Buzan raised his head lazily from Wu Qi's shoulder and said feebly, "This is ridiculous. TSK, should I steam it or braise it? Or marinate it with spices, wrap it in mud and roast it? To be honest, I really look down on catfish flood dragon and those 2 long worms. They are too careless when they eat." Swallowed, they actually swallowed it alive. All the feces and urine were swallowed together. This was too unsightly. You have to cook it meticulously and simmer it over a small fire to slowly bring out a good taste. Otherwise, you'll be letting down this natural spiritual creature. While talking, Ao Buzan began drooling. He looked at the young man from head to toe, and let out a weird chuckle. The white-clothed young man was shocked by Ao Buzan's words. He abruptly took a few steps back and studied Ao Buzan for a while before he mocked, "And I thought you were some great spirit beast. It's a black-skinned snake." Ao Buzan stood up angrily with his 2 back claws, then waved his front claws and bellowed, "A black-skinned snake? Your whole family are black-skinned snakes. Damn it, Lao Tzu has 4 paws. Do you see that? Lao Tzu is a black dragon, a pure-blooded black dragon. Lao Tzu's bloodline is purer than the bloodline of your whole family. You might even have the bloodline of some livestock bastards mixed in your bloodline. Lao Tzu is the only son of a black dragon, or something like that." Ao Buzan smacked his lips, turned to look at Wu Qi, and swallowed his words. Wu Qi paid no attention to Ao Buzan. He stared coldly at the white-clothed young man and shook his head lightly. The girls were so frightened that cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. "Brother Fu, don't talk nonsense. This senior is our savior," they cried out. But, the more anxious the triplets were, the more Brother Fu felt a sour taste rushing to his head. He stared angrily at Wu Qi's dignified and calm demeanor, and compared it with his own flirtatious temperament. He felt sick of it. He pointed a finger at Wu Qi and cried out furiously, "Nonsense! What savior? Do you think this young lad has the ability to save you?" As the white-clothed young man's rebuke rang out, dozens of sword beams flew out from various wooden houses in the valley and surrounded them. Wu Qi shook his head at the Luo clan's speed of response. It had been a long time since they had come to greet them with such a commotion. If they were attacked by an enemy, how were they going to deal with this situation? Such an extremely slow cultivator clan that didn't even have a protective array set up in front of their house was actually able to mix around in the Mi province for so long. It seemed that the Mi province government's crackdown wasn't strong enough. A middle-aged man with a dignified face flew up into the sky on a flying sword. From afar, he cried out, "Luo Shui, Luo Yu, Luo Ling, you are back. Nephew Fu, who are you looking for?" The girls hastily bowed to the middle-aged man and said, "Father, this senior is." Luo Shui stared blankly at Wu Qi. She suddenly realized that she still did not know Wu Qi's real name. Wu Qi cupped his fist and bowed slightly to the middle-aged man. "I'm Greed. Fellow Taoist Luo, it's nice to meet you." Clearing his throat, Wu Qi said, "When I was passing by Mi province, I happened to see fellow Taoist Luo Yu's daughters being hunted by someone. That's why I lent them a helping hand. I have some questions that I need to ask a local fellow Taoist. That's why I followed you here." Upon hearing Wu Qi's words, the purple-faced man, who was also the girl's father, Luo Hao, quickly returned the greeting and said, "I see. May I know what kind of misunderstanding has occurred between fellow Taoist Greed and nephew Fu?" Although he was told that Wu Qi had saved his daughters, Luo Hao still doubted it. All three of his daughters possessed the cultivation base of early-stage nascent soul realm, and no ordinary cultivator could defeat them if they joined forces. Therefore, he did not believe that Wu Qi had saved them. The white-clothed youth quickly came next to Luo Hao and said, "Uncle, this Taoist has an unknown background, and he is emanating an evil aura. No matter how I look at him, he does not look like a good person. Although he claimed that he had saved my three little sisters, who knows if he has set him up to sneak into Luo clan. In your nephew's opinion, it would be better to capture this person and interrogate him. After all, Luo clan had just moved here 3 years ago. If an enemy sneaks into their clan, they will have to move again." Wu Qi's face twitched. Did he really need to use 3 girls to sneak into Luo clan? The Luo clan was not guarded at all, so there was no need for Wu Qi to sneak in. He had made up his mind. If this Luo clan really dared to attack his opponents, they would not blame him for being merciless. The girls glared at the white-clothed youth. Together, they came next to Luo Hao, grabbed his arms and sleeves, and began to act coquettishly. While murmuring, they told him how they were in danger, and how Wu Qi happened to save them. Luo Hao and the white-clothed youth's expression flickered when they heard that Wu Qi had killed 13 demon cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Cave, and that the strongest among them had the cultivation base of peak-stage nascent soul realm. The arrogant and domineering young man had turned into a cowardly and vulgar man, while Luo Hao suddenly had a great respect and admiration for Wu Qi. He cupped his fist and said, "So, you are an old senior of nascent divinity realm. Please, come in." Luo Hao brought Wu Qi to the wooden house in the middle of the valley and said with a smile on his face, "Today, the patriarch of Fu clan from Mi province has come to visit us. My patriarch is having an important discussion with the patriarch of Fu clan in the main house. Please forgive us if we have neglected you." With his divine will, Wu Qi had long discovered that there were 2 nascent divinity cultivators in the wooden house. One was a mid-stage nascent divinity cultivator, and the other was about to break through to the late stage. Judging from their conversation, the mid-stage nascent divinity cultivator was the patriarch of Fu clan, Fu Tianming, and the one who was about to break through to the late stage was the patriarch of Luo clan, Luo Hao's father, and the three girls' grandfather, Luo Lu. After landing in front of the wooden house and being greeted by Luo Hao, Wu Qi strode into the main hall of Luo clan's main house. The white-clothed man, Fu Tianming's grandson, Fu Qianqi, rushed into the hall ahead of Wu Qi. He moved closer to Fu Tianming, who was sitting in the guest seat, and whispered something into his ear. While talking, he kept turning his head to look at Wu Qi. Wu Qi paid no attention to the whispers between Fu Qianqi and Fu Tianming. He walked into the hall, cupped his fist and bowed to Luo Lu, who was sitting in the main seat, and said, "I'm Greed." "Greetings, fellow Taoist Luo Lu. The reason why I'm here is that I have some questions to ask you." Upon seeing Wu Qi's behavior, Luo Lu rose to his feet hastily and returned Wu Qi's greeting. He realized that he could not see through Wu Qi's cultivation base. The aura emanating from Wu Qi's body was extremely strange. One moment, it felt like a nascent divinity cultivator, and the next moment, it felt like nothing. Luo Lu had no idea how he could tell what level Wu Qi's cultivation base had reached. Luo Lu returned the greeting respectfully and said happily, "Fellow Taoist, please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier. Have a seat and serve me some tea." While Wu Qi and Luo Lu were talking, Fu Tianming's face had turned gloomy. "Brother Luo," he cried out in a deep voice, "we haven't finished our discussion, have we? We, the Fu clan, have shown our utmost sincerity by giving Qianqi the formation of the five elements reversal heavenly illusion formation as a betrothal gift to let Qianqi marry Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling." The three girls who came in right behind Wu Qi were struck dumb. Luo Ling cried out in astonishment, "What? Grandpa, you want us to get married? Marry Fu Qianqi?" Luo Yu, who had a guilty conscience, said angrily, "We can marry anyone but this playboy. Don't you know how many girls he has raped every year?" Luo Shui frowned and snapped, "Grandpa, don't you know Fu Qianqi's reputation in Mi province? He is the scum of the immortal clans, and you want us to marry him? If that's the case, we'd rather cut our hair and become monks." Luo Lu laughed dryly. Just as he was about to explain the matter to his three beloved granddaughters, Fu Tianming pointed his finger at them and snapped, "We are the ones who call the shots here. You three little girls have no right to speak here. Stand aside obediently. After the betrothal gifts are decided, you will consummate your marriage with Qianqi. From now on, Fu clan and Luo clan will be one, and the entire Mi province will belong to both of us." Without saying a word, Wu Qi came before Fu Tianming. Amidst Fu Tianming's astonished gaze, he grabbed Fu Tianming's neck and lifted him up as if he was lifting up a toad. Then, he gave him a total of 108 slaps on the face. The heavy slaps knocked all of Fu Tianming's teeth out of his mouth, and the flesh on his face was badly mutilated. Wu Qi purposely exerted a little more force, breaking Fu Tianming's cheekbone. While slapping Fu Tianming, Wu Qi frowned and snapped, "I'm talking to fellow Taoist Luo here. Why are you interrupting us? Hey, why are you interrupting us? Just sit aside obediently. Once I've asked fellow Taoist Luo what I want to know, I'll go and wipe out your entire Fu clan later." As Fu Tianming was grabbed by Wu Qi, he could not muster any energy in his body. He was like a dead man, allowing Wu Qi to slap him. Everyone in the room was struck dumb. They felt a chill run up from their feet to their heads, and they were too frightened to think. Fu Tianming was a mid-stage nascent divinity cultivator, one of the top 10 experts in the Mi province's world of cultivators. Chapter 536. After a series of slaps, Fu Tianming fainted and had no idea where he was. Then, Wu Qi grabbed him by the neck and slammed him heavily onto the chair. Wu Qi frowned as he looked at Fu Tianming's bloodied and ragged face. Suddenly, he thrust his leg and kicked Fu Qianqi, who was standing next to him like a wooden block. Wu Qi had used some strength in the kick, and the tip of his foot tore open Fu Qianqi's belly. The air exploded, ripping Fu Qianqi's intestines and stomach into dozens of pieces. Fu Qianqi howled miserably as he was thrown hundreds of feet away, smashing his head into the wooden wall of the hall. He rolled and struggled on the grass outside the hall, with blood gushing out from his stomach. If an ordinary man were to suffer such a serious injury, he would have died a long time ago. However, Fu Qianqi was a nascent soul cultivator, and his life force was much stronger than an ordinary man. Clutching his broken stomach with both hands, he wriggled and groaned on the ground, letting out shrill howls. Everyone in the hall was struck dumb, especially those from the Luo clan, who were rooted to the spot and unable to move. Wu Qi was too fast and too cruel. Not only that, Fu Tianming, one of the top 10 experts of Mi province, could not even put up a fight against him. What did that mean? Wu Qi was at least a heaven immortal, or else he would not have been able to beat and humiliate a nascent divinity cultivator so easily. I hate these self-righteous pretty boys, and those old fools who can't distinguish right from wrong and only support their descendants. Wu Qi gave Fu Tianming a backhand slap and made him fall to the ground. He said furiously, "It is your Fu clan's great fortune that I didn't provoke you, but you just had to provoke me. Aren't you just courting death? You are just a mere nascent divinity cultivator, and yet you think you are someone important?" Fu Tianming finally came to his senses. He struggled to his feet, stared at Wu Qi with a venomous look on his face, and said through clenched teeth, "Please tell me your name, senior." Today's humiliation. Wu Qi's face turned cold, and he grabbed Fu Tianming's neck with his left hand. A large amount of devil qi gushed out from his palm, instantly enveloping Fu Tianming's entire body. The frightening squeaking sound of silkworms chewing on mulberry leaves came from the black mist. Not long after that, a few dried bones fell to the ground. These were all Fu Tianming had left. All of his energy essence and nascent divinity were devoured by Wu Qi, turning into an insignificant part of the chaotic power in his body. If you don't have enough strength, then don't provoke someone who's stronger than you. Otherwise, you'll definitely bring about a fatal disaster. This is the iron law of the immortal cultivation world. You dare to cultivate without even understanding this unspoken rule? Mockingly, Wu Qi stomped on the ground and crushed a few bones, sneered and said, "Do you really think I'll give you the chance to seek revenge in the future? I've said it before, I'm going to wipe out the entire Fu family." If someone offended him, he had to nip the danger in the bud. Unknowingly, Wu Qi had begun to transform into a real immortal cultivator. After merging with Wu Wang's memories and experience, Wu Qi had become even more fearsome than ordinary immortals. Fu Qianqi could not help but howl at the top of his voice when he saw his patriarch die a miserable death. "Grandpa." Wu Qi flipped his palm, and the air around Fu Qianqi suddenly trembled. A crisp cracking sound rang out, and Fu Qianqi's body shattered into a mist of blood, along with his nascent soul. Wu Qi did not even bother to plunder the insignificant energy essence of a mere nascent soul cultivator. He intended to kill Fu Qianqi to establish his might, and that was why he killed Fu Qianqi with such a strong visual impact. Luo Luo was struck dumb. Trembling, he looked at Wu Qi, then bowed in fear and said, "Senior Greed, please have a seat of honor." Nonchalantly, Wu Qi sat down on the chair where Luo Luo was sitting just now. Placing his hands on the armrests, he said coolly, "Don't be afraid, and don't worry. I'm not the kind of fiend cultivator who kills innocent people. If Fu Tianming and Fu Qianqi had not provoked me for no reason, I wouldn't have killed them. I just have a few questions, and I'll leave after I'm done." Luo Lu, Luo Hao, Luo Shui, and all the other members of the Luo clan, including the servants and maidservants, did not dare to make a sound. Luo Lu, Luo Hao, and the other core members of the Luo clan stood respectfully in the hall, looking at Wu Qi obediently. A few serving ladies carefully came up and cleaned the hall, then served him fragrant tea and a few plates of spirit fruits that could be considered to be of decent quality. Nodding, Wu Qi went straight to Luo Lu and asked him a few questions. First, where was the capital of Mi province? What kind of character did the prefecture overseer have? How strong was the military force in Mi province? Second, how many itinerant cultivators were there in Mi province? Apart from the myriad demon's cave, What other powerful itinerant cultivators were there? Were there any immortal markets where itinerant cultivators gathered? If so, where were they located? Were there any unique natural treasures that could be traded there? Third, did he know the situation around Mi province? Did he know where he could get a map of the regions around Mi province? Were there any itinerant cultivators living in the provinces and counties around Mi province? Were there any itinerant cultivators who were strong enough to establish their sects and bases in the nearby provinces? There were some other miscellaneous questions, but they were not as important as the above. Some of the questions Wu Qi asked were known by Luo Lu, and some he did not. However, he managed to answer more than 90% of the questions. Judging from Luo Li's answers, Wu Qi knew that Mi province and the provinces around it were all inferior provinces with weak overall strength. There were many itinerant cultivators, but only a few of them could make a name for themselves. Although they were inferior provinces and did not have a strong military force, there were not many itinerant cultivators who could establish their own sects here. The few provinces around Mi province were not the hot spots that the immortals who invaded from outer heavenly realms valued. For example, in Zhong province, the conflict between the immortals and the officials of Deyu had reached a point where they were openly waging war against each other. In the few nearby provinces and counties, there were no itinerant cultivators who dared to fight against the officials of Deyu. There were indeed a few immortal markets in Mi province that were secretly run by itinerant cultivators, and the largest of them was only tens of thousands of miles away from Luo clan's current base. It was also the most chaotic place, and the place where supreme-grade items could easily be found. Most of the people who visited it were evil cultivators, ghost cultivators, fiend cultivators, and other heretical cultivators. They had the courage to violate the ban imposed by the officials of Deyu by plundering all the minerals and spirit herbs. Therefore, the number of supreme-grade materials that could be found in that immortal market was higher than other immortal markets, and the frequency was higher as well. From Luo Li's narration, Wu Qi was also surprised to find that Great Yu's official control over the entire Pangu continent had reached a point where the net of heaven had no loopholes. He had learned from the blind old man in Anhui city that there was an extraordinary treasure in the imperial palace of Deyu, the Pangu's map, which could provide a real-time map of the topography of Pangu continent. But, it was only now that he learned that there was a copy of the Pangu's map in every province that belonged to the officials of Deyu. Through the copy, the prefecture overseer of Deyu could clearly know the changes in the energy in every energy vein in his territory, as well as the changes in the total amount of energy on every mountain. In other words, when a cultivator excavated an energy vein or collected some spirit herbs, it would cause the energy fluctuation in the copy of the Pangu's map, which would let the prefecture overseer know that some immortal cultivators were carrying out some activities in a certain place. With that, the prefecture overseer could immediately deploy an army to suppress or hunt them down. Therefore, it was not easy for immortal cultivators to carry out their activities on Pangu continent, unless they were strong enough to occupy a mountain base. Itinerant cultivators like the Luo clan could only struggle to survive under the strong suppression of the officials of Deyu. Wu Qi sucked in a cold breath and raised his head to stare at the ceiling with a flicker in his eyes. The copy of the Pangu's map. It was a complete waste for those prefecture overseers to have this treasure in their hands. With these copies, Wu Qi would be able to clearly know which energy veins were the most abundant, which mountains were the most suitable to be used as a mountain base, and even what kind of rare treasures could be found in a certain province. I'll have to collect more copies of the Pangu's map when I have time. After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi looked up at Luo Lu and said with a smile, "Luo Lu." Luo Lu was taken aback. He quickly bowed and answered respectfully, "Senior." Luo Li's heart was filled with trepidation, as if he was filled with 15 buckets of water. He had no idea why Wu Qi had called for him. He had been worried about this fearsome man who could kill Fu Tianming with ease, fearing that the foundation of Luo clan would be destroyed because of his careless words. Wu Qi lightly tapped the armrest of his chair with his fingers as he said in a deep voice, "There is not a single powerful immortal cultivator in Mi province yet." Luo Lu bowed and said, "That's right. The overall strength of itinerant cultivators like us is too weak to resist the attacks of the officials of Deyu. Wu Qi nodded and said, "It is fate that I saved Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling. For the time being, I'll take them as my disciples. As for your Luo clan, you can be my nail in me province. I'll teach you cultivation techniques, formation maps, medicinal pills, and talismans. I'll also send a few heaven immortals to guard Luo clan and make them your elders." With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi said, "According to what you said just now, with a few heaven immortals guarding the small military force in Mi province, and the protection of the formation maps I've personally deployed, the Luo clan will no longer have to run around. When the overall strength of the Luo clan is strong enough, we can occupy a few mountains and establish our own clan. Isn't that a wonderful thing?" Luo Lu was taken aback. He gave Wu Qi a look, and he was shocked at first, then wild with joy as he dropped to his knees and bowed. "Senior, I can't repay your kindness even if I die." Luo Lu knew that the Luo clan had found an opportunity to make a fortune. Although it was a risky journey, it was better than anything else to have a strong backer. Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling dropped to their knees obediently and said, "Greetings, master." Wu Qi chuckled. He touched his sleeve and suddenly realized that he was penniless now. With no other choice, he fished out 300 immortal stones from the storage ring he robbed and placed them on the table. "Well, these 300 immortal stones will be my gift to you." With a bitter smile on his face, Wu Qi shook his head and said, "Focus on your cultivation. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy these immortal stones before you break through the realm of heaven immortals." The 300 immortal stones glittered on the table, and the eyes of all the elders of the Luo clan widened. They had really climbed up a high branch this time. Luo Lu plucked up his courage and asked, "Senior, what is the name of our sect?" Wu Qi pondered for a brief moment, then said in a deep voice with a smile on his face, "The Underhand Sect." The Underhand Sect that came from Earth had planted its first nail on Panga continent. Chapter 537. Wu Qi sat cross-legged in the middle of the Great Hall. All the members of the Luo clan, young and old, as long as they had some cultivation base, were sitting around him, asking Wu Qi questions about their cultivation. Wu Qi did not hesitate at all. Whenever there was a question, he would immediately give them a long explanation, quoting from the ancient scriptures. Usually, the explanation he gave to one member of the Luo clan would answer the questions in the minds of many others. Luo Lu was a lucky man. He was originally an ordinary woodcutter in Mi province 1,500 years ago, but when he was chopping firewood, he found a cultivation scripture in a cave, the heart scripture of the Great River. Since the Mi province had just been established, the government had a weak control over the people. Therefore, Luo Lu began to cultivate the heart scripture of the Great River. In just a few hundred years, he had broken through the nascent soul realm, cultivated his nascent divinity realm, and attained the body of a half-immortal that would never age or die. However, his foundation was too weak, and he could not fully comprehend all the profound mysteries in the heart scripture of the Great River. After stepping into the nascent divinity realm, Luo Li's cultivation base began to slow down, and now, he could hardly make any further progress. The heart scripture of the Great River could allow a cultivator to become a lower-grade heaven immortal, but Luo Lu knew very well that with his own strength, he could not even transcend the tribulation and become an immortal. Fortunately, Wu Qi came. Wu Qi had shown his fearsome overall strength and formidable means, and Wu Qi had expressed his intention to recruit the Luo clan. Therefore, Luo Lu had joined Wu Qi without hesitation. As the saying goes, fortune comes from danger. 3 days ago, with Luo Lu leading the way, Wu Qi had slaughtered all the members of the Fu clan, taking the Chimen Dun Jia formation record, which the Fu clan had found, making it one of the Luo clan's ancient scriptures. At the same time, the Luo clan had also obtained the Fu clan's wealth that had been accumulated for 1,000 years. With that, the Luo clan's wealth had doubled, and even those members of the Jin Dan realm who did not have any treasures were given a full set of flying swords. Intimidating them with his might, and winning them over with kindness. To put it bluntly, it was like giving them a stick and then putting a sweet date in their mouth, and forcing them to swallow it. This was how Wu Qi dealt with the Luo clan. Over the past 3 days, he did not give any real cultivation technique to the people of the Luo clan. All he did was to explain to them the problems they encountered in their cultivation. Like a spring breeze and a drizzle, when he solved all the problems, he also removed the wariness in the hearts of the people of the Luo clan. While Wu Qi was answering Luo Li's questions about how to use the natural energies to nourish the nascent divinity, how to use the sunlight, rain, dew, wind, and thunder to temper the nascent divinity, and how to turn the nascent divinity into an illusory state so that he could comprehend the great Tao of the heaven and earth, for long, drawn-out whistles were suddenly heard coming from outside the valley. The roar shocked all the people of Luo clan, and they dared not to move. There was a tremendous immortal pressure hidden in the roar, which was a great deterrent to all the immortal cultivators of Luo clan. It was especially true for Luo Lu, who had the most profound cultivation base, as he could sense the immortal pressure in the roar the most. His body turned stiff, and cold sweat broke out like raindrops, while his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Wu Qi flicked his sleeve at the right moment, unleashing a gentle force that enveloped the people of Luo clan with layers of clouds, blocking the immortal pressure that was suppressing them from the whistling. "Since you are here, come in at once," Wu Qi cried out in a deep voice. "It took you 3 days to get here. It must have been a tough journey for you." 4 figures emerged amidst a faint light in the great hall of Luo clan. 4 heaven immortals, who were dressed like Taoists, had white hair and a ruddy complexion, cupped their fists and bowed to Wu Qi and said, "Greetings, my lord." Wei Nanzi, Huai Yunzi, Immortal Ming Zhang, and Reverend Fei Feng were heaven immortals whose overall strength ranged from 32nd to 33rd tier. They were the unlucky ones who had their immortal souls controlled by Wu Qi in the mine in the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, and were forced to become Wu Qi's loyal subordinates. 3 days ago, when Wu Qi made up his mind to make the Luo clan his first nail on Panga continent, he had summoned one of his celestial fiend puppets and sent 4 heaven immortals to Mi province at the fastest speed. A few months ago, when Wu Qi was preparing to strike at Miaoying Palace, he had sent away over 15,000 cultivators and immortals in the mine using teleportation formations. Under the deployment of the celestial fiend puppet clones, these cultivators and immortals had already been sent to serve under their command, becoming the first batch of deployment. If not for the fact that Wu Qi needed 4 heaven immortals to guard Luo clan, Wei Nanzi and his companions would have been running a sect in Zhong province. Raising his head to look at the 4 heaven immortals, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, "Well, you may rise." Wei Nanzi and his companions straightened their bodies and looked at Wu Qi with great reverence. Reverend Fei Feng, who had the strongest cultivation base among them, said respectfully, "Master, what orders do you have for us?" After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi nodded and said with a smile, "Zhong province is a first-grade province with a formidable overall strength. Although it has a large population and abundant natural resources, it is not a good place to fight them head-on. On top of that, the prefecture overseer of Zhong province seems to have encountered some problems recently, and the situation is treacherous. It is not a good place to develop one's overall strength." Patting the ground next to him, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, "This is Mi province, an 8th-grade province. It is uninhabited, and there are no powers guarding it. From today onwards, you are the elders who serve Luo clan. You don't need to do anything, but if you need anything, just listen to Luo Li's orders." Pointing at Luo Lu, Wu Qi said coolly, "This is Luo Lu, the clan leader of Luo clan. Just listen to his orders." Hastily, Luo Lu rose to his feet, cupping his fist and bowing to Wei Nanzi and his companions, asking him to order 4 heaven immortals to carry out the mission. Luo Lu did not have the courage to do so. But, since it was Wu Qi's order, even if he did not have the courage, he had to do it. When he saw Wei Nanzi and his companions, Wu Qi asked for 2 blank jade slips from Luo Lu. Then, he gave Luo Lu all the cultivation techniques and things to pay attention to when cultivating the Song of Gale to the realm of heaven immortals, as well as 36 diagrams of formations. From now on, the entire Luo clan will cultivate this cultivation technique. It is a supreme great Tao, not something your so-called heart scripture of the Great River can compare with. Study these 36 diagrams of formations carefully." Frowning, Wu Qi shook his head, sighed, and said, I can't believe that an immortal clan does not even have a defensive formation around its base. If this gets out, it will be a great disgrace to me. Quickly study these diagrams of formations, so that when the disciples of Luo clan travel outside in the future, they will have formation discs with them, and their safety will be guaranteed. Luo Lu blushed at Wu Qi's words. Reverently, he took the jade slips and sent his divine will into them. Immediately, he was struck dumb. A look of wild joy emerged on Luo Li's face. Without saying a word, he sat down on the ground and devoted all his heart and soul into studying the cultivation technique in the jade slips. The Song of Gale was a supreme mystic technique inherited from Reverend Gale, which could allow one to step straight into the realm of primordial immortals. Even though it was only the most basic cultivation technique, it was thousands of times more profound than the heart scripture of the Great River. Every word and every sentence was profound and unfathomable, like the ringing of morning bells and evening drums, causing one to ponder deeply. Luo Lu had only skimmed through the first few sentences, but he already knew that the Luo clan was now rich. After giving a deep look at Luo Lu, who was immersed in wild joy, Wu Qi handed another jade slip to immortal Ming Zhang, who was the most proficient in the Tao of formations among the 4 heaven immortals. This is the 9 winding cloud river formation. Deploy it properly to protect the Luo clan. Since you are an expert in the Tao of formations as well, you can do whatever you want outside the formation. Also, when you are guarding this place, you will be responsible for teaching the people of Luo clan the Tao of formations. Immortal Ming Zhang accepted the flying sword and answered respectfully. Clapping his hands, Wu Qi asked with a smile, how far is the Mi province's capital from here? Hua Yunzi hurriedly smiled and said, it's not far. We teleported all the way here, and it took us 2 days and 12 hours. It's roughly around 900 million kilometers away, and it's right northwest. Nodding satisfyingly, Wu Qi smiled and said, excellent. Luo Hao, Luo Shui, the 3 of you will be my guide. Didn't they say that the Blackfish Immortal Market is frequented by a large number of cultivators from the Evil League? Bring me to the Blackfish Immortal Market. I don't have any suitable treasures with me now. My hands are empty, and my heart is empty as well. For an immortal cultivator, if he did not have a suitable flying sword or magical treasure, he would feel as if he was running naked on the street. Currently, he only had a Darkeen hassock that did not listen to him, and he had even devoured the divine flame of order. He did not have anything else with him right now. Therefore, he had to get himself some handy treasures, or else, he would have to fight with someone empty-handed. He might be able to bully those with a lower cultivation base, but when he encountered an immortal with a similar overall strength, he would definitely suffer a great loss. Luo Hao and the 3 girls were overjoyed. They rose to their feet hastily, bowed and answered. Wu Qi slapped Luo Lu, who was lost in thought. Luo Lu woke up with a start, smiled and said, I'll leave this place to you. Make sure the 4 revered elders are well taken care of. All the food and drinks must be the best. As for the rest, I'll leave it to you to decide. With a flick of his sleeve, Wu Qi turned to Luo Hao and said, lead the way to the Blackfish Immortal Market. Let's see what amazing treasures we can find there. Luo Hao answered excitedly. Without hesitation, he beckoned his 3 daughters to follow closely behind Wu Qi. 5 beams of light shot into the sky, heading towards the Blackfish Immortal Market in just a blink of an eye. Along the way, the 3 girls kept telling Wu Qi about the Blackfish Immortal Market. The owner of the Blackfish Immortal Market was a big snakehead demon with a cultivation base of mid-stage nascent divinity realm. It was unknown which immortal had given him a call, but he had gained sentience and cultivated into a demon several tens of thousands of years ago. He was lucky enough to avoid being killed by the great oracles of Mi Province's Directorate of Celestials, and had survived until now. When he opened the Blackfish Immortal Market, the snakehead demon would pay him 1 lower-grade energy stone as a tax for every transaction, regardless of the value of the goods. Even if the value of the goods was less than 1 energy stone, or the value of the goods was over 10,000, the snakehead demon would only pay 1 lower-grade energy stone for every transaction. There was a rumor that the snakehead demon was born stupid, and was not very smart when it came to numbers. In order to avoid making a fool of himself, he had set up this strange rule. However, it was precisely because the snakehead demon would only pay one lower-grade energy stone for every transaction that was made that the Blackfish Immortal Market had the largest flow of customers in Mi province. While chatting idly along the way, the Luo clan's valley was only several tens of thousands of miles away from a deep mountain lake where the Blackfish Immortal Market was located. Although the speed of the three girls' sword beams was slightly slower, it only took them a few hours to arrive above the lake, which measured several tens of miles in circumference. Luo Hao cast a beam of spirit light at a small island in the middle of the lake. In just a blink of an eye, a plume of smoke rose from the island, and a few fish-headed demons stepped on the clouds and approached Luo Hao while laughing. "Welcome to the Blackfish Immortal Market, fellow Taoists." While the 5 fish-headed demons were greeting the guests with smiles on their faces, Ao Buzan suddenly sneezed and unleashed a faint dragon might. The few fish-headed demons shrieked miserably as their bodies went limp and fell from the clouds. Chapter 538. Pa! Ao Buzan spat a mouthful of saliva into the lake. The eyes of a fish-headed monster, who had fallen into the lake because of his dragon might, lit up. Suddenly, he leaped up and swallowed the saliva, along with a large amount of water, into his stomach. Wagging his head and wagging his tail, he turned to Ao Buzan and said, "Oh, Grandpa True Dragon. This little demon is too bold, so I'll take a little bit of your dragon aura." Grinning coldly, Ao Buzan used his hind claws to support his body and stood on Wuqi's shoulder. He swayed his body from left to right complacently and said with an air of superiority, "Well, you little demons do know what's good for you. I'll give you a mouthful of saliva as your reward." Luo Hao and his 3 daughters stared blankly at the fish-headed monster, whose face was filled with flattery, then turned to look at Ao Buzan, who was standing proudly on Wuqi's shoulder. Suddenly, they realized that this was a true dragon with the purest bloodline. Only dragons with the purest bloodline could be addressed as Grandpa True Dragon by these aquatic demons. Dragons were the kings of all aquatic demons under the heaven. No wonder Ao Buzan's sneeze could scare a few fish-headed monsters and make them fall into the lake. No wonder the fish-headed monster hastily swallowed the saliva when he spat it out. Ao Buzan's saliva was the legendary saliva of dragons. If it was used to water plants, it could turn ordinary plants into spirit herbs of the same grade as Ganoderma. If an ordinary aquatic demon obtained a wisp of dragon essence energy, they would be able to carry a faint aura of dragons, and would have a great chance of transforming into a dragon in the future when they were cultivating. Ao Buzan threw his head back and laughed complacently. Meanwhile, Wuqi flicked his finger on Ao Buzan's forehead and said with a cold grin, "Very well, I suddenly remembered that I'll build a huge herb garden in the future, and you'll have to spit in it every day. I heard that the potency of the elixirs grown with dragon saliva is more than 10 times stronger than the same kind of elixir. Since you like to spit, you have to spit every day." Ao Buzan's arrogance abruptly diminished. He hung his head dejectedly and curled up on Wuqi's shoulder. Not long after, he began to snore, but he did not dare to answer Wuqi's question. Wuqi snorted coldly. Led by Luo Hao, the 5 of them landed on the small island in the middle of the lake. When the fish-headed monsters saw that Wuqi had a pure-blooded true dragon by his side, they didn't dare to approach them anymore. They merely nodded and bowed politely as they gestured and pointed out the way into the Blackfish Immortal Market. There was a pavilion in the middle of the island, and below the pavilion was the entrance of a tunnel about 10 feet wide. Whether it was the pavilion or the tunnel, the workmanship was extremely crude. The pavilion looked like a thatched hut, while the tunnel looked like a carelessly dug pit. Walking down a crooked, uneven, and rough staircase, the lighting along the way was pretty good. The ceiling was inlaid with luminous pearls of various sizes, and the light they emitted was so bright that not a speck of dust could be seen in the tunnel, and it was as bright as day. From time to time, they could see some fish-headed monsters, shrimp-headed monsters, and other aquatic demons running back and forth in a daze, their mouths murmuring something. After walking for tens of miles, the tunnel suddenly opened up, and an underground immortal market appeared before Wuqi's eyes. It was a huge cave measuring several tens of miles in both width and length, and about 1 mile in height. The shape of the cave was crooked and uneven. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with several tens of large luminous pearls. Some cultivators had cast some simple spells on these pearls, such as the bright light spell, making the pearls shine with dazzling light, making them look like little suns. As a result, the light in the cave was very good, and the pearls were placed in very good positions. Under the illumination of the pearls, the cave actually had the magical effect of shadowless lamps. Curiously, Wu Qi reached out his hands, and found that his palms indeed had no shadows. He couldn't help but smile and murmur, "You're pretty advanced. You can even make shadowless lamps." Inside the spacious cave, countless small stalls had been set up in a disorderly manner. Countless strange-looking cultivators were struggling to move between these stalls, which were tightly packed together. There were nearly 10,000 stalls of different sizes in the huge cave, but none of them had a clear plan, and no one was managing them. Everyone set up their stalls wherever they wanted. Sometimes, the distance between the stalls could only allow a loach to squeeze through. As for those stalls, some of them carried a large stone slab into the cave and laid it on the ground. These were the stalls that Wu Qi saw with his divine sense, and they were the stalls with the best quality. Some of them used a few tree trunks and covered them with a piece of animal skin. This was a pretty good stall. Some of them were careless. They drew a circle on the ground, cast a small restrictive spell to mark the circle, and threw their belongings on the ground. This could also be counted as a stall. There were also some cultivators who didn't even bother to set up a stall. They carried 7 to 8 leather bags of various sizes on their backs, the openings of which were half opened, revealing the various goods inside. They either stood still or followed the cultivators as they wandered around, shouting and bragging about the rarity of their goods. 70% of the cultivators were devil cultivators, ghost cultivators, Yao cultivators, and other heretical cultivators. These cultivators did not pay much attention to their attire. Some of the devil cultivators and ghost cultivators wore white skeletons and the like, which they had just dug out from some tombs. The rotten flesh on some of the skeletons had yet to fully decompose, giving off a strong stench. When Wu Qi scanned these cultivators with his divine sense, he discovered that there were a few skunks and weasels among them who had cultivated into demons. After they became demons, their innate divine abilities had become stronger, and the stench they exuded was enough to knock out cultivators with weaker cultivation bases. Then, they huddled together with the cultivators around them, sweating profusely. The stench of their sweat mixed with the stench of their bodies, and together with the stench of rotten flesh, formed a strange stench that was even more lethal than the miasma in the forest. Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling were stunned. They rolled their eyes at the same time, rushed to one side and began to vomit. The stench in the cave was too horrible. Even though they were early-stage nascent soul cultivators, they could not resist the stench. Luo Hao had already cast a small restrictive spell to isolate the air around him. With a wry smile on his face, he said to Wu Qi, "Senior, Luo Shui and the others have never been to Blackfish Immortal Market. The stench in this place is really not that good, but if you want to find something good, you have to come here." Wu Qi twitched his lips and shook his head. Then, he produced 3 5-petal lotuses he got from the great serpent of 9 Yin's belly and gave them to the girls. "Keep these treasures in your mouth. They can help you resist the foul stench in this place." This place is not bad at all." Hastily, the girls took the 9 Yin 5-petal lotus and shoved it into their mouths. A delicate fragrance immediately flowed through their bodies, and wisps of refreshing air came wafting out from every pore on their bodies. They felt their spirits were lifted, and they could no longer feel the dreadful foul air in the outside world. They gave Wu Qi an admiring look. Where did he get these strange flowers that they had never heard of before? He was truly worthy of being their master, as even a little flower from him could bring such a miraculous effect. Wu Qi could not help but smile bitterly in his heart when he saw the respectful look in the girl's eyes. When he was forming his innate chaotic spirit body in the great serpent of 9 Yin's belly, he had used up 99% of the over 10,000 lotuses he collected. Now, He only had several dozens of them left, which Ao Buzan had purposely taken care of. It was a little extravagant for him to use 3 of them at once today. Wu Qi gave Luo Hao a glance, and he saw the hope in his eyes as well. But, as a man, I don't mind if it stinks. Can't you see that there are so many cultivators squeezing together to enjoy the horrible foul stench? Ignoring Luo Hao's pitiful look, Wu Qi clasped his hands behind his back and strode toward the crowded stall in front of him. The girls giggled at their father, then quickly followed behind Wu Qi. Luo Hao sighed. Without hesitation, he cast a few minor restrictive spells to shield himself from the foul stench, then walked into the stall with a frown on his face. Faint wisps of smoke billowed out of Wu Qi's body as he exercised Yuan Hua sex in action scripture. Plumes of smoke billowed out of his body, and a soft, hidden force spread out in all directions. Apart from the 4 men of Luo clan, no one could get close to him within 10 feet of him. Wherever he went, a wide path was opened up. When a few reckless and overbearing demon cultivators saw Wu Qi's behavior, they snorted coldly and deliberately used their burly bodies to slam into Wu Qi. But, no matter how hard they slammed into Wu Qi, they could not hit anything. They could only feel that the area 10 feet around Wu Qi was a vast, misty void. Their tremendous force, which could crush a lofty mountain, vanished as soon as they got close to Wu Qi, and their bodies slid away as if they were as light as a feather. After this happened a few times, these demon cultivators finally realized the huge gap between them and Wu Qi. Their faces turned deathly pale as they squeezed into the crowd and disappeared. The other cultivators turned their heads away as well, not daring to give Wu Qi another glance. With a smile on his face, Wu Qi walked past one stall after another. Although he could easily cover the entire cave abode with his divine will, the items sold in these stalls were too many and varied. Some of them even had the effect of blocking divine will and natural energy, like the nether ocean dark gold copper. Therefore, it was impossible for him to find the real good stuff with his divine will. That was why he brought the 4 men of Luo clan into the middle of these stalls and used his chaotic divine eyes to examine them one by one. Not bad, there were many 9th grade spirit herbs, and a few 8th grade spirit herbs. 8th grade spirit herbs could be used by mid-grade heaven immortals to concoct immortal pills, but to the cultivators here, they were useless. If they accidentally ate an 8th grade spirit herb, the enormous pressure would be enough to kill them with poison. There were quite a number of materials for crafting items, but there were not many good materials. Wu Qi did not like those ordinary materials, so he just walked past them and took a quick glance at them. After walking past several hundred stalls, Wu Qi frowned slightly. Suddenly, he grabbed a rabbit demon, who was walking past him with a lazy voice. She had 17 to 18 leather bags hanging on her body. Clearly, she was a demon who had cultivated herself into a rabbit. She had the appearance of a teenage girl, but she had a pair of long rabbit ears on top of her head. She had a 3-petaled mouth, and both of her eyes were bloodshot. Although she looked like a human, when Wu Qi gave her a closer look, she was still a big rabbit. The rabbit demon was timid. When Wu Qi grabbed her, she cried out immediately, "Please spare my life, Senior. Please take whatever you want." As she spoke, tears began to stream down the rabbit demon's face, and her 2 long ears drooped down from her head. Wu Qi did not pay any attention to the rabbit demon. Instead, he reached his hand into a leather bag hanging on her chest and fished out a pale silver stone. It was about the size of a fist, weighing over 300 kilograms, and inlaid with several hundred grape-shaped metal cores that glowed with a rainbow glow. Wu Qi was not mistaken. The Star Jade Spirit Gold was a gold immortal item at the same level as the Nether Ocean Dark Gold Copper. Chapter 539. Star Jade Spirit Gold was one of the few gold immortal materials that could be manufactured by artificial means. By placing some special metal minerals in an environment where the power of the stars was extremely abundant, and under high temperature and pressure, and after hundreds of millions of years of calcination and quenching, it was possible to form a piece of Star Jade Spirit Gold. For those primordial immortals and gold immortals with long lifespans, they had plenty of time to waste on artificially manufacturing gold immortal materials. But for those gold immortals and heaven immortals with insufficient experience, it was undoubtedly unacceptable for them to spend hundreds of millions of years waiting for a piece of crafting material to form. It was a strange metal that could absorb the power of the stars and turn it into starlight extreme rays to kill the enemy, and was an excellent material for crafting immortal swords. Therefore, the price of star jade spirit gold was extremely high in the world of cultivators. Every tael of star jade spirit gold was worth 100 lower-grade immortal stones, and there were hundreds of kilograms of it in front of them. Weighing the piece of star jade spirit gold in his hand, Wuqi looked at the rabbit demon, who was so frightened that she was about to fall to the ground, and asked, "How much do you want for this?" Wuqi did a quick calculation and realized that he could not afford this piece of star jade spirit gold, and he had no idea where the rabbit demon got it. But since she had taken it out to sell, it proved that she had no idea about the value of this piece of star jade spirit gold. As long as she named a price and Wuqi met it, this precious treasure would be his. The rabbit demon's ears pricked up. She looked at Wuqi with tears in her eyes, but she was already smiling and saying, "So Senior is not robbing me?" Wuqi was stunned, then he shook his head and said, "I'm really not robbing you. Just name your price. What do you want in exchange for this?" The rabbit demon glanced at the piece of star jade spirit gold in Wuqi's hand. Her ears twitched, and she said straightforwardly, "I found this in the wilderness, and I don't know how much it is worth. If Senior likes it, please give it to me." She counted with her fingers, then carefully looked at Wuqi and asked, 3 lower-grade energy stones, aren't you being too greedy?" 3 lower-grade energy stones? Wuqi was speechless. This piece of star jade spirit gold was worth at least hundreds of thousands of low-grade celestial stones in the hands of a knowledgeable golden immortal. To gold immortals, immortal stones were just consumables, just like how spirit stones were to ordinary cultivators. But, a good gold immortal artifact was a powerful weapon that could protect one's life. How could a mere immortal stone compare to it? Wuqi touched his storage ring, then turned to look at Luo Hao awkwardly and said, "Give this little demon 10 upper-grade energy stones." By looking at Wuqi's expression, Luo Hao knew that Wuqi did not have any energy stones. He quickly took a step forward, fished out 10 upper-grade energy stones and gave them to the rabbit demon. In the past, if Luo Hao had to fork out 10 upper-grade energy stones at once, he would have felt a sharp pain in his heart. But now, with the 300 immortal stones that Wuqi had given him, the Luo clan had suddenly become filthy rich. So, 10 energy stones was nothing to him. The rabbit demon's ears stood straight up, and they were twitching violently. She took the 10 upper-grade energy stones with both hands, clutching them tightly and refusing to let go. She fixed her eyes on Wuqi, her eyes glowing brightly as she cried out, "Senior, can you please take a look at me? Do you still have any treasures that you like? I'll sell everything to you as a package." 10. No, 1 upper-grade energy stone will be enough. She waved her arms and legs as she clung to Wuqi, then said, "I can sell myself as well." 1. No, 3 upper-grade energy stones, and I'll be yours. I'll guard your house, serve you tea, and serve you water. I'm the most hard-working one. Please do me a favor and buy me as well." Wuqi was taken aback. He could not believe that there were still people who would sell themselves in such a hurry nowadays. However, when he looked at the overall strength of this rabbit demon, he found that she only had the cultivation base of early-stage Jin Dan realm. She was just a little demon who had just grown up, so she still looked like a big rabbit. Then, he thought of how the imperial court of Dayu had suppressed and attacked all the mountain spirits and water demons, and how the great oracle of the Directorate of Celestials had personally suppressed and destroyed the ancient banyan tree in Greenwood Mountain. Wuqi could imagine how hard it was for these little demons to live in the territory of Dayu. Under the glare of Wuqi's chaotic divine eyes, there was not a single part of this rabbit demon's body that could hide from him. The rabbit demon only had a tattered flying dagger on her body, which could barely be considered a magic tool. Aside from that, she had no other defensive treasures. She did not even have a better cultivation technique. She was just a big rabbit who absorbed the essence of the sun and moon instinctively, and cultivated her demon body with the natural energy. No wonder she was in such a hurry to sell herself as well. It turned out that she had also realized that it was not easy to live in the world of cultivators, and was busy looking for a backer. After a brief moment of pondering, Wuqi was wondering if he should buy this rabbit demon as well. The rabbit demon stood about 4 feet tall, with a pair of ears about a foot long. It looked fair and plump, which made it look rather cute. Perhaps, it would be a good thing to buy it and give it to Princess Xianglu as a pet. At the thought of Princess Xianglu, Wuqi's heart softened immediately, and he was about to buy the rabbit demon. But, before Wuqi could agree to the rabbit demon, 2 young men pushed their way through the crowd and came rushing towards him. Both of them had their eyes fixed on the star jade spirit gold in Wuqi's hand. Suddenly, one of them said, "Rabbit, we'll pay you 11 upper-grade energy stones for this thing. Sell it to us. You are looking for a backer, and we happen to be short of a boy to clean the herb garden. You can make up the number." Wuqi gave the 2 young men a look, then casually shoved the star jade spirit gold into his storage ring. He ignored the 2 young men and said to the rabbit demon with a smile, "Little demon, it's good that you want to follow me. Oh, I happen to be short of a servant girl to serve tea and water, so you can come under my wing for the time being." The rabbit demon was stunned for a moment, then she quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed 9 times to Wuqi. She cried out joyfully, "Greetings, Senior, greetings, Master." The rabbit demon's 2 long ears fluttered above her head, and the rabbit fur on them stood up. The 2 young men shouted angrily, "Rabbit, 11 upper-grade energy stones for that lump of soil of yours." The rabbit demon jumped up, stared at the 2 young men seriously, and said, "But, my master has already bought that treasure, and I have already received the money, so I can't sell it to you anymore." Wuqi snickered inwardly. Although this rabbit demon was a little timid, she was an honest person. The chaotic divine eyes swept over the rabbit demon, and all the meridians, muscles, and bones in her body were vividly displayed in his eyes. Her aptitude was pretty good, and she should be a mixed-blood rabbit with the bloodline of some divine beasts in her body. Although she didn't have any cultivation technique, her foundation was very solid. The 2 young men's expressions changed immediately. They gave the rabbit a resentful look, then turned to Wuqi and shouted, "Name a price, we want that stone." Only then did Wuqi look straight at the 2 young men. At first glance, Wuqi found something strange. These 2 young men were definitely not humans. In his chaotic divine eyes, their bodies looked like 2 masses of pure energy. One young man's body was filled with violent flames, while the other's body was filled with violent storms. But, they were definitely not fiends, ghosts, or demon cultivators. Their meridians and internal organs had not even formed, and they were simply 2 masses of natural energies. Their divine sense was very strong, strong enough to fight against a heaven immortal above the 20th tier. But, under the restraint of such a powerful divine sense, the energy in their bodies had stabilized into the shape of a human body. They were not humans, but gods. They were gods born naturally from the natural energies under the operation of the great Tao of heaven and earth. In ancient times, it was the ancient gods who waged war against the human race. 99% of those ancient deities had fallen in the war with the humans, and the remaining less than 1% of the ancient deities had been forced into a long slumber. Among the ancient deities that still enjoyed great fame in the heavens, the most famous ones were the Eastern Green Emperor, the Northern Black Emperor, and the Western White Emperor. Apart from these few ancient gods who were still active, most of the gods that appeared in front of the human race were these newly born gods. They represented the power of the laws of heaven and earth, and were born with the overall strength equivalent to a mid-tier heaven immortal. After a moment of silence, Wuqi shook his head and said, "No. You know what it is, but I'm sorry, but I know this treasure as well." The 2 young men's faces fell. The young man with fiery red hair and a body filled with a violent flame grinned coldly and said, "You know this treasure as well? It's not up to you to decide. If you sell it, you can leave this place safely. If you don't, I guarantee you won't be able to take a step out of this place." The young man with green hair and a body filled with energy that looked like tornadoes laughed strangely and said, "Flaming Tiger is right. Give us the star jade spirit gold, and you can leave this place safely. But, if you don't, you will die. Then, these 3 girls will belong to us brothers." The 2 newborn gods laughed strangely as they fixed their strange eyes on the 3 girls. Their laughter was filled with lust and wickedness. Wu Qi shook his head and said with a cold grin, "With your looks?" Wu Qi could not understand why these 2 fellows were interested in women. Their bodies were not fully formed yet, and they were just 2 clumps of wind and fire energy. They did not have the ability to have sex with women, and yet, they had taken a fancy to the 3 Luo Shui sisters. Flaming Tiger laughed strangely and said, "Why? You don't believe that we can make these 3 women hover between life and death? Hee, Feng Lang is right. After we kill you and take these 3 girls, we can go back to our cave abode and have a good time." Not allowing Wu Qi to say another word, Flaming Tiger suddenly let out a strange laugh. His right arm transformed into a flaming dragon that stretched several tens of feet long, then slapped down towards Wu Qi. The temperature of the flaming dragon was extremely high, and its pale blue flame made the temperature of the entire cave rise. Some cultivators who were afraid of fire let out strange cries and hastily unleashed all sorts of magical treasures and restrictive spells to defend against the high temperature. For a moment, the entire cave was filled with blinding lights, and countless cultivators were cursing at the same time. All of a sudden, the entire cave trembled, and a deep voice was heard coming from the bottom of the cave. "This is Old Black's place. If you want to fight, get out and fight." Chapter 540. When the voice rang out, 36 palm-sized Xian Bing shields appeared right next to Wu Qi. The bone-piercingly cold Xian Bing shields firmly blocked the invasion of the fiery dragon, and the cold air rolled and swallowed a big half of the fiery dragon. The red-haired young man's face flickered slightly. His body trembled and took a few steps back. In the deepest corner of the cave, there was a muddy ground with a circumference of a few miles. Along with the deep and heavy voice coming from underground, a huge black fish head slowly poked out of the ground. The muddy ground boiled like porridge, and large clumps of mud sprayed out, splashing all over the faces and heads of all the cultivators in the cave. In just a few breaths of time, a nearly 10 miles long black fish spirit slowly crawled out of the muddy ground. He shook the mud off his body, and his body gradually shrank. Before long, a 20 feet tall, fat, and pitch-black man with a skin as dark as coal appeared on the ground. The man walked over while gasping for breath. Wherever he went, all the cultivators automatically made way for him. Glancing at the red-haired young man, whose face was a little pale, the man nodded and said, "Lao Tzu doesn't like guests who stir up trouble all day long. I'll give you some time. Hurry up and leave, or Lao Tzu will beat you to death." The red-haired young man gave a proud smile, then gave the man a sideways glance and said with a strange laugh, "How dare you talk big like that?" Standing aside, Wu Qi said coldly, "What about me? You're good at controlling fire, but I'm good at playing this game." Wu Qi spread his palm, and a large sheet of cold air burst out from his palm, condensing into 49 Xian Bing swords in the air, each glinting with a cold gleam. Glinting with a dark blue gleam, the Xian Bing swords kept spraying out large sheets of ice crystals, hovering and wheeling around Wu Qi, forming into a powerful sword formation. The temperature within the cavern plummeted. Due to the fact that they were at the bottom of the lake, the air was extremely humid. Not long after, snowflakes began to condense in the air. The snowflakes gently fell down, turning the air white. Many of the cultivators could not help but exclaim in unison. The red-haired youth was stunned. Wu Qi was good at controlling frost, which was his natural nemesis. Moreover, the grade of the cold energy that Wu Qi controlled was extremely high. It was not something that ordinary cold energy could compare with. The red-haired youth was just a newborn fire god. The flames that he could control were only ordinary flames in the mortal world. How could he block the attack of this kind of cold energy? The green-haired man called Feng Lang took 2 steps forward and looked at Wu Qi arrogantly. "Then, what about me? Wind Wolf's arms suddenly disintegrated, turning into two green tornadoes that circled around him. Feng Lang gave Wu Qi a provocative glance, then stared at the dark-skinned man, whose expression had changed dramatically. He sneered and said, "You are just a mere nascent divinity cultivator. Get lost. This is not a place you can interfere in. Don't bring trouble to yourself. It's not easy for a dark fish to cultivate to the realm of nascent divinity." The dark-skinned man's face turned pale. The pressure that Feng Lang purposely released made him breathless. His body was trembling, and even his fat was wobbling. However, he still stood firmly where he was. Staring at Feng Lang, he roared, "This is Lao Tzu's territory. Since you are here, you better obey the rules. If you want to fight, get lost. Lao Tzu can't defeat you, but even if he has to die, he will bite a piece of your flesh." The dark-skinned man opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of teeth that were as sharp as a triangular blade. Flaming Tiger snorted coldly. He stood in front of the dark-skinned man and said, "Feng Lang, this Taoist can restrain me. Kill him, and I'll roast this dark fish for dinner." "Hee, a dark fish demon of nascent divinity realm, his flesh is very chewy." Feng Lang roared with laughter. A gust of strong wind swept out from his body, and in an instant, all the peddlers and cultivators in the cavern were thrown off their feet. Tens of thousands of people were rolled up by the strong wind, howling and wailing, and thrown forcefully against the cave wall. Only Wu Qi and a few others were in the cavern, which was several tens of miles in circumference. It was empty, but it was a perfect battlefield. A cold gleam flashed in Wu Qi's eyes as he sneered and said, "How arrogant! Aren't they just two innate gods who have just taken their final form? Do they really think they are some extraordinary beings? What a pure form of energy! Ha 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 ha!" Laughing wildly, Wu Qi casually pushed the rabbit demon, Luo Hao, and his daughter far away. Then, with a blink of his body, he came before Feng Lang. As Wu Qi had cultivated the true body of heaven and earth scripture and the dragon transformation script, the control of his fleshly body had reached an unimaginable level. He took a step forward, and in the blink of an eye, he had come before Feng Lang like an immortal using teleportation. Then, he thrust his fist out. What was even more frustrating than teleportation was that when an immortal used teleportation, there would be ripples of immortal energy. As for Wu Qi, he was purely using the energy of his fleshly body. Apart from a slight ripple in the air, he did not produce any other ripples. Immortals and gods were used to checking their surroundings with their divine will when they were fighting, but Wu Qi did not release any ripples of energy, and his divine will had lost control over Wu Qi. A loud thud echoed out as Wu Qi's fist landed on the arrogant and domineering Feng Lang's head. A stream of pure chaotic energy rushed into Feng Lang's body, and quickly began to transform the force of wind in his body. It was as if a jar of ink had been poured into a crystal-clear swimming pool. The ink spread quickly, and before long, the swimming pool had turned into a pitch-black pond. Feng Lang's face was filled with terror. He stared at Wu Qi in terror and cried out involuntarily, "What the hell is this?" Wu Qi did not answer Feng Lang's question. Instead, he grabbed Feng Lang's neck, pressed both hands down, and curled his body. In the blink of an eye, Feng Lang had turned into a fist-sized, blurry ball of wind, and was swallowed by Wu Qi. Laughing wildly, he threw his head back and burped. The chaotic energy in Wu Qi's body circulated crazily as Wu Qi quickly exercised the Song of Gale. In his spiritual ocean, the profound enlightenment of the Song of Gale flowed like a tidal wave. Feng Lang's body contained a part of the laws of wind that existed between heaven and earth. When Wu Qi forcefully devoured Feng Lang, all his energy was transformed into chaotic energy by Wu Qi, and all the laws of wind in his body had become the laws that Wu Qi had mastered. A crisp cracking sound rang out, and wisps of green wind emerged on the surface of Wu Qi's skin. After that, everything returned to normal. All the chaotic energy in Wu Qi's body quickly dispersed to every corner of his body. However, compared to the chaotic energy he possessed at the beginning, Wu Qi's strength was now at least twice as strong as before. "Fool! You are a newly formed god. Why didn't you hide in your lair to stabilize your divine body, nor did you refine your own natal divine item? Instead, you came out to wander around. Don't you know that for immortals, newly formed gods like you are even more precious tonics than Ganoderma horses and Ganoderma immortals? Wu Qi burped again, then laughed mockingly at Flaming Tiger, who was staring at him with his mouth agape and eyes wide open. Ganoderma horses and Ganoderma immortals can only replenish the consumed energy essence and energy, but for gods like you who have just formed your bodies and have yet to stabilize your divine bodies, you can still contribute a part of the laws of heaven and earth that formed your bodies. This can save a heaven immortal at least dozens of periods of time. Flaming Tiger gave a strange cry, then suddenly transformed into a stream of fiery light and shot towards the cave's exit. Wu Qi snorted coldly and cried out, "Heavenly net of dark in a low voice. Then, he waved both hands, unleashing countless tiny threads of cold air that looked like silk threads from all 10 of his fingers. The glistening cold air intertwined and intertwined in the air, transforming into a gigantic net that fell from the sky and trapped Flaming Tiger within. The fiery light transformed from Flaming Tiger slammed wildly in all directions, but when he bumped into the dark net, he immediately produced a sharp hissing noise. The bone-piercing cold air kept consuming the flame energy in his body, and before long, it had threatened the stability of his divine body. A shrill cry came out from within the dark net. "Taoist, how dare you kill me? I am a god. I am a god born under the laws of heaven and earth. Killing me is going against the laws of heaven and earth." Wu Qi shook his head. The dark net closed inwardly, and a vast amount of cold air surged out from it, compressing Flaming Tiger into a fireball the size of a human head. He laughed mockingly and said, "Killing you is going against the laws of heaven and earth? I seem to recall someone saying this to me a long time ago. Too bad, I've already killed you. What can you do to me? Hee, even if the great Tao of heaven and earth wants to kill me, it will have to find me first." Grabbing the fireball transformed from Flaming Tiger in his hand, Wu Qi pondered for a brief moment, then brought the fireball before Ao Buzin's face. "Grow up quickly, I'm waiting for the day when I can ride you and travel through the void." "Tsk, I've never ridden a dragon in my entire life." Ao Buzin gave Wu Qi a resentful look, then hastily opened his mouth and swallowed the fireball transformed from Flaming Tiger into his stomach. A strong heat spread out from Ao Buzin's body. He burped, then hastily coiled himself on Wu Qi's shoulder, trying his best to digest and absorb all the power of Flaming Tiger. The two gods, who had yet to fully take their forms, had bumped into Wu Qi, a freak who practiced a mysterious cultivation technique that happened to be their nemesis. Before they could even travel across the world, they were swallowed by Wu Qi and Ao Buzin as if they were tonics. After witnessing the scene of Wu Qi swallowing a living man, the surrounding cultivators trembled with fear, and no one dared to say a word. Only the snakehead demon, who was suffocated by the pressure from Gale Wolf and Flaming Tiger, strode up to Wu Qi. He stared blankly at Wu Qi and cried out, "Lao Tzu is telling you, you've broken Lao Tzu's rule, so you can't come to Blackfish Immortal Market anymore. Leave now, or Lao Tzu will bite a piece of your flesh off even if he has to die." Wu Qi stared at the snakehead demon in astonishment, then said smilingly, "Do you know that I can kill you with one finger?" The snakehead demon nodded seriously and said in a low, muffled voice, "I know. You are at least heaven immortals. However, it is one thing for me to be unable to defeat you, and another thing for the rule of Blackfish Immortal Market. If you kill me, you can change the rule of this place. If you don't kill me, you can only obey my rule. This is the rule that I, Old Black, have set. Since you've killed someone here, please leave." Wu Qi looked at the snakehead demon appreciatively, then glanced at the terrified cultivators around him. Suddenly, he laughed. "All right, I'll leave. You're a big snakehead, interesting. After giving the snakehead demon a deep look, Wu Qi beckoned at Luo Hao, the three ladies, and the rabbit demon, then spun and left the Blackfish Immortal Market. It seemed that Wu Qi had taken a fancy to this snakehead demon. Chapter 541. Luo Hao, his father, his daughter, and his companions followed respectfully beside Wuqi in the wilderness. Not far in front of them, a 4-feet-tall rabbit was imitating Wuqi. It had its hands clasped behind its back, its head held high up, and was taking slow steps with 1 step at a time, 3 steps at a time. The rabbit demon wagged her head complacently and giggled as she said, I feel much better now that I can walk with my back straight. Ha ha ha, the sky is so blue. Luo Ling came next to the rabbit demon curiously, grabbed her ear, and asked, how did you walk before? The rabbit demon shook her head and breathed out a deep sigh. I dug holes everywhere. How could I walk alone in the wilderness? Those Diyu soldiers are like ferocious fiends. When I ate 2 ripe ginsengs in the mountains, a large troop of soldiers would come charging at me, shouting to kill me. It's just 2 ginsengs. Then, the rabbit demon told Luo Ling about the dangers she had faced in the past. Apart from the siege by the Diyu soldiers and the daily search and suppression by the oracles, she also had to hide from all the demon cultivators who were stronger than her in the mountains and forests. Jackals, wolves, tigers, leopards, wild bears, eagles, and all the demons who had become demons could hunt her down and eat her. Not to mention the disciples of those itinerant cultivator clans. A rabbit demon who could not defend herself was the best prey for them. A demon corps could at least give them 1 more cultivator. After cultivating for more than 100 years, this rabbit demon only dared to openly mingle with the crowd in the Blackfish Immortal Market and sell some of the materials she had secretly collected in exchange for some spirit stones for her cultivation. At other times, she would only move about in the cave she had dug herself. Her lair was located in a lofty mountain near the Blackfish Immortal Market. The lofty mountain and a few nearby mountains were riddled with holes by her. A cunning rabbit had 3 burrows, but she had at least several hundred of them. Wuqi could not help but sigh faintly as he listened to the rabbit demon's complaints. This was the world of cultivators. This was the true face of the cruel world of cultivators. Weak little fairies like the rabbit spirit could only struggle to survive at the bottom. Unless they had a great opportunity and met a powerful figure like Wuqi as a backer, these weak little fairies could only struggle to survive. Sooner or later, they would become someone else's prey. Wuqi patted the rabbit demon's head with the back of his hand and scratched her long ears. Smiling, he said, nice touch, natural fur. Oh, rabbit, do you have a name? The rabbit demon tilted her head, her long ears twirling like a windmill. She giggled and said, I don't have a name, they all call me Rabbit. Master should also be called Little Demon Rabbit. After pondering for a moment, Wuqi shook his head and said, Rabbit? What a bad name. There is a Meng Xiaobai in Meng village. TSK, from now on, you will be called Tu Xiaobai. Tu Xiaobai, I will give you another Taoist name. You will be called Taoist Xiaobai. This name is simple and easy to understand. Remember it yourself. Tu Xiaobai, Taoist Xiaobai, nodded innocently. She did not know whether the name was good or bad, but since it was a name given by Wuqi, she gladly accepted it. The 3 girls were laughing so hard that they could not stop themselves. The name was just like the chickens and ducks they kept at home. It was just like the name given to them by a pet. Wuqi, on the other hand, raised his head and stared into the sky. He laughed and said, Xiaobai, oh Xiaobai, I dare not to use master's name carelessly. But, I'll make sure to bring your name to greater heights. Meng village has a Meng Xiaobai, and here we have a Tu Xiaobai. In the future, there will be a tiger Xiaobai, a dog Xiaobai, a horse Xiaobai. Why don't I gather all 12 zodiacs? After all, it is not difficult to find a little white dragon, and I will also have a dragon Xiaobai. Wuqi gently patted on Ao Buzan, who was coiled on his shoulder and trying his best to digest all the energy of the flaming tiger. Suddenly, a wicked idea rose in Wuqi's mind. Or, I can think of a way to dye Ao Buzan's hair. No, I can dye his scales so that he can abandon his identity as a black dragon and become a white dragon. After a brief moment of letting his imagination run wild, Wuqi grabbed Tu Xiaobai's ears and began rubbing them. Little rabbit, from now on, you will be a member of the underhand sect. After a brief moment of pondering, Wuqi tied Tu Xiaobai's 2 long ears into a knot, then said, later on, we will subdue that snakehead demon. After that, you can summon those little demons who live cautiously around your nest. We, the underhand sect, have just been established, and we are currently lacking disciples. Tell them that the underhand sect will treat all its disciples equally, regardless of whether they are demons, devils, ghosts, old or young, handsome or ugly. As long as they are cultivators, as long as they are loyal to the underhand sect, and are friendly to their fellow disciples, I will at least guarantee their future of becoming a heaven immortal. With a few profound cultivation scriptures in his possession, and the Song of Gale, an extremely powerful mystic scripture that could lead him straight to the realm of primordial immortal, Wuqi felt that the time was ripe for him to establish his own sect and rebuild the underhand sect on Pangu continent. Tu Xiaobai nodded, though she did not fully understand Wuqi's words. She began to count with her fingers how many demons she knew were as cowardly as her, who did not have the overall strength to protect themselves. Luo Hao, on the other hand, had a bright gleam in his eyes. From Wuqi's words, he could sense a great ambition. Perhaps, if the Luo clan followed Wuqi, they would have a wonderful future. If Wuqi could promise a future of becoming a heaven immortal to those little demons, what would he do to the Luo clan? After all, the Luo clan was the first clan in Mi province that had submitted to Wuqi. Luo Hao strengthened his confidence once again, and vowed that he would follow in Wuqi's footsteps. In just a few days, the benefits the Luo clan had obtained from Wuqi had far exceeded his imagination. As long as they followed Wuqi closely, the future of the Luo clan would be limitless. The moon hung high in the sky, and the sky was filled with twinkling stars. A few sword beams flashed across a mountain ridge in the distance. They were cultivators who had urgent matters to attend to, and were on their way. Wuqi raised his head and gave the moon a glance. The moonlight was beautiful today, but the stars were extremely dazzling as well. The brilliant starlight and moonlight merged together, transforming into a sheet of silver-purple mist that was drifting down from the sky like a mist. Tu Xiaobai raised her head and gave the sky a glance. Almost instinctively, she opened her mouth and took a deep breath. A stream of silver-purple light that could be seen with naked eyes slowly poured down from the sky and poured into her mouth. Her long fur fluttered even though there was no wind, and every single strand of her white hair was covered with a faint layer of silver light. Midnight was the best time for demons to cultivate. Absorbing a mouthful of the essence of the stars and the moon at midnight was at least as good as 2 hours of meditating during the day. For demons, the essence of the stars and the moon was the source of their cultivation, and it was the starting power of all demons. Patting Tu Xiaobai's big head, Wuqi said in a deep voice, Luo Hao, the rest of you should cultivate here as well. The essence of the stars and the moon will be beneficial to you as well. Casually, he threw out several dozens of immortal stones and constructed a grand formation that could condense and compress the essence of the stars and the moon. Then, with a sway of his body, Wuqi sped towards the Blackfish Immortal Market. As Luo Hao and the others were told, they sat cross-legged in the wilderness and began to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, Wuqi had arrived outside the Blackfish Immortal Market. With a blink of his body, he plunged into the water like a ghostly shadow, and before long, he had arrived at another huge mud pit that measured over 300 miles in circumference. A sturdy black fish was lazily lying in the mud. Dozens of fish-headed monsters were carefully standing on the black fish's body, using steel forks to pick up the scales on the black fish's body, smearing the bone-chilling mud on the scales. The snakehead seemed to enjoy the pleasure brought by the cold mud touching his body. His body would shiver from time to time, and the sound of his scales clattering against each other could be heard from his head to his tail. Snakehead demon, are you enjoying this? Wuqi laughed. His laughter shocked the snakehead demon, and he sprung up abruptly, sending several dozens of fish-headed monsters flying far away. His body shrunk rapidly, and in just a blink of an eye, he had transformed into a dark-skinned, fat man who stood about 20 feet tall. He gave Wuqi a panicked look and said angrily, "How did a Taoist like you sneak in here? You, please don't come in unless you want to." You have trespassed into the residence of an innocent man, and you must be a thief. What are you trying to do? It was still the same low, muffled roar, but there was a hint of panic and fear in his voice. Wu Qi had brutally killed Wind Wolf and Flaming Tiger, and even devoured all of them. The snakehead demon knew very well that he was no match for Wu Qi, and there was no way he could be his match. Initially, Wu Qi could have just left, but now, he had returned. It gave the snakehead demon a bad feeling. Wu Qi hovered above the snakehead demon, sizing him up with a smile on his face. After some time, Wu Qi suddenly asked, "What is 137 plus 95? The snakehead demon was taken aback. He stared blankly at Wu Qi for a long time, then began to count with his fingers. 137 plus 95, the snakehead demon's fingers were about to break, but he still couldn't figure out the answer. Wu Qi shook his head. He recalled the way the snakehead demon managed the Blackfish Immortal Market. No matter how much the transaction was, he would take a piece of low-grade spirit stone as a tax for every transaction. It seemed like the rumors were true. This fella's brain was not very good. Sighing softly, Wu Qi patted the snakehead demon's head and said, "I will send someone to help you manage the Blackfish Immortal Market, so that your daily income can be increased by more than 10 times. Then, I will teach you profound cultivation manuals. In the future, when you reach the Heaven Immortal realm, I will help you transcend your heavenly tribulation and smoothly become a Heaven Immortal. At the same time, I will also give you a powerful backer, so that no one in the Mi province will dare to provoke you." The snakehead demon raised his head in astonishment, temporarily giving up on the arithmetic problem that made his head hurt. He frowned and asked, "So many benefits? What do you want me to do?" Wu Qi smiled and said, "I intend to establish a sect, and I'm lacking some disciples. If you join me, those benefits will be yours." The snakehead demon was silent for a long time, then he stared at Wu Qi and said in a deep voice, "What if I don't join you?" Wu Qi nodded and said, "If you don't join me, then I'll barbecue the black fish meat. I'm also very interested in the meat of a nascent divinity demon. You're such a big snakehead demon, so I can try steaming, braising, cooking, or any other way to eat it. As for your nascent divinity, it just so happens that I want to forge a few immortal artifacts with me, so I can scatter your soul and inject it into the immortal artifacts as the artifact spirit." While Wu Qi was still wondering if these conditions could move the snakehead demon had already dropped heavily to his knees in front of Wu Qi. "Greetings, Ancestral Master. May I ask, what is the answer to the question just now?" Wu Qi was silent. He wished he could kick this fella away. Chapter 542. Under the moonlight, Tu Xiaobai stood proudly on a boulder on a hillside outside the valley of Luo clan, showing off the set of 3 flying swords she had just obtained. It was a mountainside covered with waist-high grasses. 3 purple beams wheeled gracefully around her, bringing with them an eerie coldness that kept stirring up cries of surprise. Occasionally, she would control the flying swords and swing them down, cutting off large patches of grasses and sending them flying high up into the air. While giggling, Tu Xiaobai controlled the flying swords to sweep over the heads of over 300 little demons standing on the hillside. Among the 300 little demons, there were walking demons, such as hedgehog demons, raccoon demons, weasel demons, and skunk demons, as well as flying demons, such as sparrow demons, magpie demons, cuckoo demons, and canary demons. There were also some water-type demons, such as carp demons, grass carp demons, loach demons, and eel demons. There were also some demons and devils mixed among them, but Wu Qi could not tell what kind of demons and devils they were. But, the most eye-catching one was a fat ape demon, who weighed at least 2,000 to 3,000 kilograms, standing amidst the crowd of little demons. Usually, apes gave people the impression of being agile and nimble, but this ridiculously fat ape did not even have the strength to stand up. Panting, he squatted on the ground, his eyes wide open as he stared blankly at the 3 purple beams flying over his head, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. After controlling the 3 flying swords for a while, Tu Xiaobai shook her body, and a set of exquisite armor, crafted exactly according to her body shape, appeared on her body. This set of moon-white armor glowed brilliantly, as if it were forged from crystals. The translucent armor was constructed from countless thumb-sized scales, and covered every inch of Tu Xiaobai's body. Even her ears were protected by two specially made sheaths. Tu Xiaobai giggled, then carefully controlled a sword beam and stabbed it into her own chest. Amidst the terrified cries of several hundred little demons, a layer of strong white light burst out from Tu Xiaobai's armor. When the sword light collided with the white light, a crisp sound rang out. The armor was not damaged at all, but the sword light was knocked several hundred feet back. Laughing complacently, Tu Xiaobai shook her head and said, "Brothers and sisters, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I'm Tu Xiaobai." Oh right, the name Tu Xiaobai was bestowed upon me by the patriarch. This is a good name. Tu Xiaobai's true form is a white rabbit. My body is as white as snow. The name Xiaobai is just right. Ha 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 ha. After talking for a while, under the envious gazes of the hundreds of little demons, Tu Xiaobai burst into laughter and said, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I, Tu Xiaobai, will never commit suicide, will I?" Ha ha ha, this armor is a high-grade Dharma treasure that Master specially refined for me, Tu Xiaobai. You didn't hear wrongly, it's a high-grade Dharma treasure. Wow! The eyes of those spirit creatures all turned green. High-grade magic treasure. They had heard of this name before, but they didn't even have a low-grade Dharma treasure, let alone an upper-grade Dharma treasure. They only knew that an upper-grade Dharma treasure was a very incredible treasure, but they had never seen one with their own eyes. Usually, Tu Xiaobai was a timid rabbit demon, and she was even worse off than them. So, how could she suddenly obtain a defensive armor of the level of an upper-grade Dharma treasure? Especially those 3 sword beams of hers, they were no ordinary items, were they not? The color, the brightness, and the intense coldness when the flying swords flew past one's scalp, they all indicated that these 3 sword beams were also extremely powerful Dharma treasures. As expected, Tu Xiaobai pointed at the 3 purple sword beams and said with a smile, "These 3 flying swords were also forged by the patriarch for me, Tu Xiaobai. They are also upper-grade Dharma treasures, ha ha ha, they are also upper-grade Dharma treasures." Another wave of exclamations rang out, and all the little demons' eyes turned green. 2 sets of upper-grade Dharma treasures. How did this rabbit demon suddenly strike it rich? The fat ape squatting among the little demons cried out, "Rabbit, who did you climb up to? Who is this patriarch you speak of?" Tu Xiaobai laughed complacently. Just as she was about to say something, Wu Qi had already soared into the sky from a mountain in the distance. With a flash, he teleported hundreds of miles away and arrived next to Tu Xiaobai in an instant. Clad in a long black robe, with his long hair hanging loosely over his shoulders, Wu Qi clasped his hands behind his back and swept his stern gaze across the many little demons down below. Then, he opened his chaotic divine eyes, allowing him to see the condition of all the little demons. Very good, they are all very good. Wu Qi looked at these little demons with satisfaction. The true form of these little demons were those fragile living beings, existences at the bottom of the food chain. The fact that they were able to cultivate into demons proved that they had very good aptitudes. They were able to survive in the cruel world of cultivators, and survive the repeated attempts of the Mi province officials to hunt them down and suppress them. This proved that they were intelligent, and had a firm and tenacious temperament. By taking these little demons as his disciples, he could win their loyalty with kindness while they were still weak. With that, the underhand sect would have a batch of useful and trustworthy disciples in the future. Those cultivators he subdued in the mine in the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean had already developed their own mature minds, and Wu Qi had subdued them with violence and the threat of death. In the future, these cultivators would definitely be eliminated by Wu Qi. The truly reliable ones were still these little demons, who were still naive and had the hearts of beasts. As long as he taught them well, Wu Qi would immediately have a batch of useful disciples. Patting Tu Xiaobai's big head, Wu Qi looked at these little demons and said, "I am the underhand sect leader. Everything Tu Xiaobai has, I have personally forged for her. If you join my sect, you will receive the same treatment as Tu Xiaobai. All the little demons were stunned. Receive the same treatment as Tu Xiaobai. Didn't that mean they could each get 2 sets of magical treasures? They were magical treasures, not magical items, but the legendary magical treasures. His eyes, which were originally green, suddenly turned red. These weak demons rarely even saw Dharma artifacts, let alone Dharma treasures. Furthermore, Wu Qi had promised them that as long as they joined the underhand sect, he would give them 2 sets of magical treasures each. However, the shock brought to them by Wu Qi was not limited to just that. Looking at all the little demons, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, as long as you work wholeheartedly for the underhand sect, dedicate yourself to cultivating diligently, anyone whose cultivation base has improved, and who has rendered meritorious service for the underhand sect, will be rewarded. Spirit pills, spirit talismans, spirit items, as long as your contribution increases, the treatment you will receive will also increase. The little demons became even more restless. They did not know how powerful spirit pills and spirit talismans were, but spirit items? Were they spirit items? Did they hear that right? Wu Qi had promised them that as long as they contributed enough, he would give them spirit items. They were spirit items. Not magical treasures, but the legendary spirit items that had a spirit of their own, able to automatically protect their owners and attack their enemies. The ground trembled slightly, as the fat ape leaped several hundred feet into the air and landed forcefully in front of Wu Qi. The fat monkey stared blankly at Wu Qi for a while, then suddenly kowtowed and said, "Rabbit has a good character. Although he is timid, he never lies. Ancestral Master, this little demon greets Ancestral Master." Wu Qi gave the monkey a joyful look, pondered for a brief moment, then pulled out a golden staff and a set of awe-inspiring black armor, threw them over to the monkey and said, "Don't you monkeys like to play with staffs? You can have this stick. And this armor, refine it carefully. Your foundation is not bad." Under the observation of Wu Qi's chaotic divine eyes, he found out that there was an enormous ball of energy rolling inside this monkey's body. It was as if he had accidentally eaten some rare natural herb, but was unable to completely digest its medicinal strength. As a result, the medicinal strength lingered in his body, turning him into such a wretched appearance. Once Wu Qi taught him a profound cultivation technique, when his cultivation base improved, he would naturally be able to digest the medicinal strength. At that point, the progress of this monkey would certainly be the fastest among all the little demons. Once Lu Xiaobai's wicked sense of humor emerged again, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, "I already have a disciple, whose Taoist name is Beiji. Monkey, why don't you?" When the name Wukong was at the tip of his tongue, Wu Qi suddenly thought of a frightening consequence. Hastily, he swallowed the name back into his stomach. If he had Beiji and Wukong as his disciples, and if he had a little white dragon and a catfish demon, wouldn't he become Tripitaka? He absolutely could not do such a thing. After pondering for a long time, Wu Qi patted the monkey's head and said with a sigh, "I have a good Taoist name, but I dare not give it to you. You were born an ape, and your body is green, so I'll call you Yuan Qing from now on. You must never forget your roots. With this name, even if you become a primordial immortal in the future, you must always remember that you were born an ape." Yuan Qing dropped to his knees respectfully and kowtowed to Wu Qi a few times. Seeing that Yuan Qing had indeed received the magical treasures from Wu Qi, the other little demons swarmed forward and kowtowed to Wu Qi. Wu Qi was overjoyed. He took out the magical treasures he had refined in the past few days and gave them to these little demons. Wu Qi had to thank the snakehead demon for running the Blackfish Immortal Market for a long time, which gave him a huge amount of low-grade materials for Wu Qi to waste. Otherwise, he would not have so many magical treasures to give to others. After temporarily subduing these little demons with the power of the magical treasures, Wu Qi flicked his sleeve and flew to the valley where the Luo clan was located with hundreds of little demons. In the valley, the Luo clan had already built dozens of new wooden houses. Wu Qi threw the little demons to the ground and ordered them to call their friends and find a suitable wooden house to stay in. An old steward of the Luo clan had already arrived, bringing these little demons, who had just received the new magical treasures and joined the underhand sect, to different wooden houses. After obtaining the magic treasure and a seemingly powerful senior as their backer, the little demons were so excited that they danced with joy. The entire valley was suddenly filled with their howls. Suddenly, the valley of the Luo clan, which was a little lifeless, was filled with a hint of liveliness. With his hands clasped behind his back, Wu Qi could not help but smile as he looked at the little demons running around in the valley. Now that the matter in Mi province had come to an end, he needed to rush back to Zhong province. There were some things that he had to deal with now. For example, Wu Qi should go to the Yu's imperial court and get himself a position there. Chapter 543. Luo City, the capital city of Mi province, had a history of less than 500 years, which made it a very young city on Panggu continent. The city was about 30 miles in circumference, with a population of more than 500,000 people. The military prince in the city had 3,000 regular soldiers of the Yu dynasty, 1,000 soldiers from Punishment Court, and an unknown number of oracles from Directorate of Celestials. Wu Qi glanced around curiously as he walked along the spacious and tidy streets of Luo City. This was the first time he had officially entered a provincial city of the Yu dynasty. It was a city that controlled all the affairs of a province billions of miles in circumference, as well as the life and death of all the living beings in this vast land. If the imperial court of the Yu dynasty, as well as the prefecture overseer of River province, the first-grade province that governed Mi province, did not interfere with the government affairs here, the prefecture overseer of Mi province would be the supreme ruler here. The buildings in the city were built in the typical style of the Yu dynasty. Huge houses were built of heavy rocks that looked as sturdy as fortresses, and they were separated by green trees and flowing water. Officials from Punishment Court, clad in black clothes and wearing tall crowns, walked expressionlessly along the streets with their soldiers, maintaining the peace of Luo City. The ordinary people of Luo City looked relaxed and at ease, and most of the pedestrians on the streets were smiling. The atmosphere was simple and honest. Some children were playing in the streets. Some were ordinary children, but some had already practiced the basic cultivation techniques of the human race. But, no matter how great the gap between their overall strength was, they were just playing like children, and nothing had happened. There were no beggars or refugees on the streets. It suddenly occurred to Wu Qi that he had not seen any beggars or refugees since he arrived on Panggu continent. This was a land rich in resources, and as long as one worked hard, one could always fill their stomachs. Moreover, the people here were simple, honest, and straightforward. Even if natural disasters created some refugees, they would soon be absorbed and digested by the nearby villages and towns. Looking around at the peaceful and smiling people of Luo City, Wu Qi suddenly found that he had fallen in love with Panggu continent. Standing at the end of the street, he smiled and looked at a group of children who were playing fighting games with wooden sticks and bamboo poles. After a quarter of an hour, he nodded and strode towards the prefecture overseer mansion in the middle of the city. The teleportation formation set up by the Diyu government to connect the various provinces and cities was set up in the square in front of the prefecture overseer manor. When they arrived at the prefecture overseer's mansion, the teleportation formation on the square burst with a bright light, and a few officials of Diyu dressed in green walked out of the formation. There were already several officials from Mi province waiting at the side of the square. They walked up to the officials and received an official document and a token from them. They gathered together and whispered a few words. Then, the Mi province officials smiled and led these foreign officials to a pavilion on the side of the square. After a brief moment of silence, Wu Qi walked up to a few officials, who were clad in black clothes and had jade crowns on their heads. He cleared his throat and asked the officials, "My lords, I'd like to use the teleportation formation to go to Zhong province. I wonder if you can do me a favor." The officials gave Wu Qi a look, and one of them pulled out a bone mirror and pointed it at Wu Qi. A beam of white light shone from the mirror and shone on Wu Qi's body. Suddenly, a large plume of purple mist sprayed out of Wu Qi's skin, visible to the naked eye under the reflection of the bone mirror. The officials who had a solemn expression immediately put on a smile. The official holding the bone mirror said, "So, you are a brave warrior of our clan. Of course, it's convenient. Ha, I thought you are one of those ignorant cultivators. We were going to give you a hard time. Wu Qi cupped his fist and bowed to them, then threw a pile of energy stones as the fee for using the teleportation formation, and strode into the formation. When these officials found out that Wu Qi was cultivating with the cultivation technique of the human race and had an extremely strong cultivation base, their attitude became extremely friendly. They didn't even ask Wu Qi where he was going or what he was going to do. They just helped him activate the teleportation formation, allowing Wu Qi to find the coordinates of Zhong province and teleport out. Wu Qi knew that he had deliberately exposed the fact that he possessed the true body of heaven and earth scripture, which was why these officials treated him with such a good attitude. If it were a cultivator who wanted to use the teleportation formation of Diyu, he would either have to pay an extremely expensive price, or he would simply vanish from the face of the earth. Unless he was a cultivator who had a powerful backer, whom the officials of Diyu would not dare to act rashly, and who had obtained an identity certificate from the immortal pass established by the officials of Diyu, only then could he use the teleportation formation safely. Diyu could mobilize its forces between various provinces through the teleportation formation, but the cultivators were restricted to their respective provinces. This made it easier for the officials of Diyu to strengthen the management and suppression of the cultivators in each province. The pressure brought by the teleportation formation was suddenly lifted, and Wu Qi's eyes lit up. He had already arrived at the teleportation formation in front of the prefecture overseer mansion of Zhongning City. The atmosphere in Zhongning City was extremely strange. As soon as Wu Qi stepped out of the formation, he immediately sensed the murderous atmosphere. Groups of armored soldiers were patrolling the streets around the mansion, their murderous eyes glancing at Wu Qi from time to time. Nearly 100 flying ships were hovering above the mansion, with dozens of oracles from the Directorate of Celestials sitting cross-legged near each of them. The flying ships and the oracles formed a complicated formation that firmly protected the prefecture overseer mansion within. Dozens of extremely powerful auras were hidden in the prefecture overseer's mansion, and their sharp auras were so strong that even the clouds in the sky were shattered. These auras connected with the flying ships and high priests in the sky, locking down the void around the prefecture overseer manor. As soon as Wu Qi stepped out of the teleportation formation, a few swords suddenly came stabbing at him, the tips of the swords pointing at the vital parts of his body. A few fierce-looking armored soldiers surrounded Wu Qi. One of them, a captain clad in golden armor with the soul of a black python hovering behind his back, glared at Wu Qi and snapped, "Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing in Zhong province? Tell me now." As the captain gave the order, the few swords suddenly thrust forward, their tips almost piercing into Wu Qi's skin. A thought flashed across Wu Qi's mind, and his face turned pale abruptly. I'm an itinerant cultivator," he said with a trembling voice. "I came to Zhong province to seek refuge with a few fellow Taoists whom I made good friends with in the past. My cave abode was breached by a few evil cultivators, and I came here to flee for my life." The golden-armored general scolded, "Are you a cultivator? You don't look like one. I think you are a warrior of the human race." The few swords thrust forward again, and their tips were about to pierce into Wu Qi's flesh. Wu Qi cried out hastily. With a twist of his body, a plume of white smoke rushed out from between his brows, and a nascent soul that looked like Wu Qi flew out of the white smoke, shrouded in layers of watery clouds and emanating a pure, and orthodox aura of Taoism. "I'm a cultivator, not a warrior of the human race," cried Wu Qi. "I'm a cultivator, not a warrior of the human race." The captain gave Wu Qi's nascent soul a cold look, then nodded slowly. "You are a cultivator. Not a warrior of our race, not a cultivator of the Fiend League, but a cultivator. A mere nascent soul cultivator, hee." A cold gleam flashed in the captain's eyes, and he was about to give the order to kill Wu Qi. A thought flashed through Wu Qi's mind, and he cried out hastily, "General, those few best friends of mine are the disciples of the 3 lotus thrones and 6 arms demon subduing great Bodhisattva, a disciple of the great solar will dazzling heavenly Buddha. I'm here because they invited me to renounce my Tao and become a Buddha. If you kill me, you won't be able to explain it to them. The great sun heavenly realm will definitely pursue this matter." The captain was stunned. He glared at Wu Qi, then waved his hand angrily and said, "Get lost." Without checking Wu Qi's identity document, the captain let go of Wu Qi and let him leave. Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and gave the captain a look, then spun and left with a smile on his face, flashing into a remote alley at the side of the square. Standing at the entrance of the alley, Wu Qi looked at the main entrance of the prefecture overseer mansion, trying to figure out what had happened in Zhong province during the past few months. None of Wu Qi's celestial fiend puppets had sent him any information about Zhong province. Apparently, all the information had been blocked. The teleportation formation flashed again, and nearly 100 burly men walked out from it. However, their luck was obviously not as good as Wu Qi's. Right after they appeared, a great oracle above the prefecture overseer mansion gave a stern cry, "3 beast warriors. Kill them." Armies of armored soldiers swarmed over from all directions, while countless restrictive spells and bone talismans sprinkled down from the sky. Before the nearly 100 burly men could figure out what was going on, they were all slaughtered by the soldiers of Zhong province. The corpses were quickly cleaned up, and the blood and gore were cleaned up as well. In just 2 hours, a dozen groups of people had arrived at the teleportation formation in Zhong province. Apart from a few Taoists who claimed that they were supported by powerful sects, and that they were just immortals from outer domains who came to Panga continent for an adventure, all the other groups of people, whether they were human warriors or cultivators, were killed by the soldiers who swarmed over from all directions. Looking at the overbearing and ferocious behavior of these Zhong province's army, Wu Qi had a rough idea of what was going on. Perhaps Feng Lingling was not killed in the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, and he had most likely escaped from it as well. But, he should not be in a good condition. More likely, he had already received the news that King Baishan was going to deal with him, and that was why he was so vigilant. Interesting. If Feng Lingling really escaped from that place, what would King Baishan and Patriarch Miaoying do? After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi shook his head in puzzlement. If Patriarch Miaoying really wanted to deal with Feng Lingling, he would have been smashed to pieces long ago. What exactly had happened that made Feng Lingling only increase his vigilance here, and did not do anything else? Could it be that something had happened to Diyu in the imperial court? I don't have enough information. Wu Qi frowned in annoyance. He could vaguely smell the tremendous risk and profit hidden in this matter, but the lack of information made him not dare to intervene in the matter rashly. With a sigh, Wu Qi gave the heavily guarded prefecture overseer mansion a glance, then transformed into a breeze and drifted away. Chapter 544. When the city wall of Anhui city appeared off in the distance, Wu Qi could not help but take a deep breath. Suddenly, 6 fiend figures rushed out of the city, transforming into 6 black-clothed Taoists before Wu Qi, who cupped their fists and bowed to Wu Qi at the same time. A massive amount of information kept rushing into Wu Qi's spiritual ocean, giving him a comprehensive understanding of the current situation in Anhui city. While chuckling, the 6 celestial fiend puppets fused into Wu Qi's body at the same time. Wisps of chaotic energy carefully flowed from Wu Qi's body into the 6 celestial fiend puppets, gradually transforming their bodies. Wu Qi was looking forward to transforming all 18 celestial fiend puppets into a chaotic body similar to Ao Buzan's. He wondered how powerful they would be. The situation in Anhui city was just as Su Qin and Wu Qi had predicted. As Zhu Linggong had cooperated well with the army of Zhong province and wiped out all the immortal cultivators who occupied Anhui County, including Greenwood Mountain and Euphoria Heavenly Palace, he was now the county governor and the city lord of Anhui city. A few months ago, he had received an official document to recruit 3,000 soldiers, and appointed a few trusted subordinates to reorganize Anhui County's military court. He was currently training the new army. The few military officers in Anhui County's military court were the family generals of Zhu Linggong's clan for many years. They were loyal and devoted to him, and their personal abilities were very strong. However, apart from a team of 300 county governors' personal guards, the rest of the 2,700 soldiers were all under the control of the scouting office brought by Yan Bugui. These elites of scouting office had also joined the military court. They formed the main body of middle and lower-level officials in Anlu County's military court, and quickly built up their prestige among the common soldiers. As for Yan Bugue, as promised by Feng Lingling, he became the punishment officer of the newly reorganized punishment court in Anlu County. The punishment court had formed an army of 1,000 soldiers, and also recruited many servants and officials from the punishment court, who were responsible for the daily security of various cities in Anlu County. The technique of the army of punishment was the true body of heaven and earth scripture. What the punishment court's bailiffs cultivated was the ordinary inner force cultivation technique. Su Qin had also tampered with the internal strength regulating breathing technique. These techniques could only allow the bailiffs to cultivate to the Xiantian realm at most, but as long as there was a need, they could immediately condense the Jin Dan and become a true cultivator with a slight modification of the incantation and some external stimulation. This was a hidden chess piece. Once the need arose, Anlu County had several thousand big and small cities, and tens of thousands of villages and towns. The number of officials and bailiffs in charge of the security of these cities and towns was a huge number. Once all of them were transformed into Jin Dan cultivators, the number would be too terrifying. The military court and punishment court had fallen into the hands of Su Qin and Yan Bugue. Apart from that, there were also administrative departments such as the Agricultural Hall, which were in charge of agricultural production, all of which were managed by Zhu Linggong. An administrative department like the agricultural department had no real power, nor did it have much benefits, so Su Qin simply gave up control of this area. As for the Directorate of Celestials in Anlu County, it was established by a few low-grade oracles sent by Zhong Province's Directorate of Celestials. The Directorate of Celestials had a venerable status, and it was detached from the administrative system of Anlu County. They had formed their own branch, and neither Zhu Linggong nor Su Qin could interfere with their affairs for the time being. After quickly analyzing the massive data and information sent to him by the celestial fiend puppets, Wu Qi transformed into a beam of dark light and shot into Anhe City. Compared to the time when Wu Qi left a few years ago, the itinerant cultivators who wandered around Anhe City had vanished without a trace. Over the several hundred years since the invasion of itinerant cultivators, the exquisite and novel pavilions and pavilions built on both sides of the streets had long been demolished. All the buildings in Anhe City had been transformed into the square, heavy, and unadorned buildings of Diyu. As the pavilions and pavilions built by itinerant cultivators were demolished, the streets in Anhe City had become much wider. From time to time, small groups of punishment court servants would stroll slowly across the clean streets, casting vigilant glances at the pedestrians walking back and forth on the streets. It was especially so for some high-ranking officials. From time to time, they would pull out specially made bone mirrors and shine them at the suspects walking on the streets. Just as Wu Qi landed noiselessly on the street, a young man clad in a green robe and a small hat was shown at by the bone mirror held by an official from the punishment court. Abruptly, a blinding white light burst out from the mirror. The official pointed at the young man and cried out sternly, "Cultivator." An early-stage Jin Dan cultivator. The shrill sound of a bone flute rang out from all directions, causing a sharp pain in the ears of those who heard it. The common people on the streets were fleeing in all directions, screaming in panic. Suddenly, a small flying ship soared into the sky from the direction of the city lord mansion, and soon arrived above the street following the sound of the bone flute. Then, a dozen muscular figures descended from the sky. Yan Bugue had personally brought a dozen punishment court soldiers to the scene. The early-stage Jin Dan cultivator was so frightened that he screamed hoarsely, "I mean no harm, I'm just..." Yan Bugue had already rushed in front of him, and with a single slash of his sword, he pierced through the cultivator's dantian cleanly. An invisible purple energy rushed into the cultivator's body, and his golden core was shattered into pieces. Yan Bugue kicked the cultivator's dead body away and snapped, "Listen up, all the rascals. This is the territory of Diyu, and no immortal cultivators are allowed to trespass here." Yan Bugue's loud shout shook nearly half of Anhe City. Suddenly, loud applause and cheers were heard coming from somewhere. The common people of Anhe City felt happy and relieved that Yan Bugue had dealt with this Jin Dan cultivator so decisively. From the cheers of the common people, Wu Qi could tell that even though itinerant cultivator forces had invaded Anlu County for hundreds of years, the common people had always been loyal to Diyu. When the official forces of Diyu once again ruled this land, all the common people had returned to Diyu without hesitation. Diyu had ruled Pangu continent for too long, and it would take a long time and effort to establish a vast base here, as well as some opportunities. But, judging from the current situation in Anhui City, it was a good thing that all the official forces had fallen into the hands of Wu Qi and Su Qin. With a sharp sword in his hand, Yan Bugui glanced around with an awe-inspiring air, and happened to see Wu Qi. Smiling and nodding at him, Wu Qi strode out, cupped his fist and said, "Your Excellency, I'm a man of the wilderness, and I make a living by hunting wild beasts. I wonder if I can join Anhui City and contribute my strength to the people of Anlu County." Yan Bugui pretended to give Wu Qi a once-over, then said with a frown, "You mean, you want to be an official?" Wu Qi nodded his head. He patted his own chest, laughed out loud and said, "Since I was young, I've never had the courage to fight. Even the big bears and fierce tigers on the mountain are no match for my punch. Back then, when those immortal cultivators ruled Anhui City, I disdained to associate myself with those filthy people. Now that Your Excellency has led an army to recapture Anhui City, I'm here to serve you." After a brief moment of pondering, Yan Bugui walked a few circles around Wu Qi, nodded thoughtfully and asked, "How strong are you?" Wu Qi glanced to his left and right, then strode to the entrance of a shop on the street. He grabbed a huge boulder that was used to tie mounts in front of the entrance, then lifted it over his head with one arm effortlessly. The boulder measured about 10 feet in circumference, and weighed at least 20 to 30,000 kilograms. As he swung his arm, he casually tossed the boulder over his shoulder like a child playing with a ball. Yan Bugui cried out in surprise, then clapped his hands and said with a smile, "You are indeed a brave warrior. Excellent, excellent. It will be a real waste if you join the punishment court. Let me introduce you to the military court, as they happen to be short of 100 men, Lieutenant. What is your name? You can take the position of 100 men, Lieutenant." After throwing the boulder back to its original spot, Wu Qi cupped his fist at Yan Bugui and said with a loud laugh, "My name is Tan Lang." When he said the name, Tan Lang, Wu Qi's heart skipped a beat. It was Wu Wang's real name, the real name of his master and underhand sect. He was going to use this fake name to stir up a reign of terror on Pangu continent. Yan Bugui gave Wu Qi a look, and Wu Qi nodded his head slightly. After that, Yan Bugui pulled out a bone mirror glinting with a bright green gleam, and carefully scanned Wu Qi from head to toe. A faint layer of purple mist drifted out of Wu Qi's skin. "No wonder you have such a great strength," Yan Bugui said happily. "It seems that you have comprehended Pangu's power. Excellent. A good man like you who can comprehend Pangu's power on his own is exactly the talent we need." Wu Qi smiled and said nothing. "So, the official name of this purple mist was Pangu's power?" "It was the purple mist that grew on Pangu continent, which was derived from Pangu's body. If it was not Pangu's power, what else could it be?" The officials of the punishment court were smiling happily as well. With the purple mist around him, it was impossible for him to be a spy sent by immortal cultivators. 1 was 1, and 2 was 2. For these ordinary officials, this was the simplest question. No one would have thought that there was an abnormal existence like the innate chaotic spirit body, who could make purple mist coexist with other energies. Yan Bugui had discovered a talent, a great talent. Therefore, he personally brought Wu Qi to the military court in Anhui City. Upon hearing the news, Zhu Lingong and a few military officers under him came out to greet them. When they heard that Yan Bugui was going to recommend a man to join the military court, Zhu Lingong's expression remained unchanged, but the faces of the few military officers around him turned unsightly at the same time. Wu Qi's heart skipped a beat. He gave Yan Bugui a look, reached out a hand to touch his face, and smiled without saying a word. Yan Bugui's face was unsightly. "Why are you hesitating over such a trivial matter?" he said with a gloomy face. "Your Excellency, please mind your attitude," said one of the military officers next to Zhu Lingong angrily. My lord is the current county governor of Anlu City, the lord of Anhe City. Wu Qi sighed lightly. He turned to look at Zhu Lingong and asked, Old Zhu, where is that son of yours, my disciple, Beiji? Alright, I don't want to be 100-men lieutenant anymore. In a few days, just hand over the authority of the military court to me. Zhu Lingong's face fell, and a few of his trusted military officers took a few steps back in fright. Purple mist rose from Wu Qi's body, emanating a tremendous pressure that forced Zhu Lingong and the others to drop to their knees. He said in a deep voice, I'll cast a restrictive spell on your souls later. As long as you behave obediently, you will be fine. After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi shook his head and said, just enjoy the wealth and glory that city lord and county governor can bring you. Leave the rest to us. Zhu Lingong's expression was indescribable. He stared at Wu Qi with a trembling body, then finally bowed his head dejectedly. Chapter 545. It had been 3 months since Wu Qi joined the military court in Anhe City. During these 3 months, he ate and slept together with the new recruits in Anhe City, went through the harshest training together, and became one with them without a hitch. Because of the formidable overall strength he displayed, as well as his almost demonic charisma, he had become the well-deserved chief of the military court in Anhe City. With just one order, Wu Qi's will would be thoroughly carried out by these simple and honest soldiers. Even the elites of scouting office planted by Yan Bugui in the military court could not defy Wu Qi's orders. Therefore, after 3 months, Yan Bugui simply withdrew all the elites of scouting office back to the punishment court and focused on managing his own territory, not bothering to stir up trouble in Wu Qi's territory anymore. Zhu Lingong and his closest confidants had their souls controlled by Wu Qi in the most direct way, and Wu Qi had planted countless spies around them to keep an eye on them. The so-called county governor of Anlu City and the city lord of Anhe City had completely become his puppets. Wu Qi's method was more violent, but it was more direct and effective. Only when he planted a vicious restrictive spell in the souls of Zhu Lingong and all the people around him, did he truly control the entire Anlu county. On this day, after Wu Qi had finished his morning class and had a round of wrestling and crawling on the drill ground with 3,000 new recruits, he took a bath and changed into a new set of clothes. After that, he asked the 6 celestial fiend puppets to transform into the appearance of ordinary soldiers and followed him to the newly rebuilt Directorate of Celestials in Anhe City. Just yesterday, the Lord Oracle of Anlu County's Directorate of Celestials had sent an invitation to Wu Qi, inviting him to pay a visit to the Directorate of Celestials today. In the system of Deyu Dynasty, the Directorate of Celestials in a county city was the lowest level among all the Directorate of Celestials in Anhe City. However, the Directorate of Celestials still occupied a large area of land in Anhe City, and the scale of their buildings was only slightly smaller than the City Lord Mansion. 4 tall stone pillars were erected before the entrance, and a huge hall built with black rocks. A large brazier was placed on top of each pillar, from which a green flame soared several tens of feet into the sky, casting a faint green light that covered nearly half of Anhe City. The gate of the main hall was 60 feet tall and 20 feet wide. Beside the huge stone gate, a dozen low-grade oracles, clad in black linen robes and white wooden crowns, were standing on both sides of the gate. This was the first time for Wu Qi to look at a priest of Deyu at such a close distance. The faces of the dozen or so low-level oracles were as pale as corpses, and their frail bodies looked as if they could be blown away by a gust of wind. Their gazes were deep and profound, emitting a faint green, blue, and other glows that resembled ghostly flames. They were dressed in linen robes, and the cuffs of their sleeves were embroidered with a few star patterns using extremely fine white threads. The oracles of Deyu were divided into 3 grades, sun, moon, and star. Each grade was divided into 9 grades, and they were identified by the patterns embroidered on their sleeves. These patterns not only represented their identity, but also their overall strength. Star oracles were the weakest oracles in the system of Deyu's Directorate of Celestials. They could even be considered as apprentices, and their overall strength was roughly equivalent to a cultivator from Jin Dan realm to nascent divinity realm. Moon oracles were equivalent to heaven immortals. By using various mystic arts and talismans, their overall strength was strong enough to fight against heaven immortals. The sun oracles corresponded to the golden immortal level of existence. For example, Yuzong, the principal oracle of Deyu's Directorate of Celestials in Zhong Province, was a sun oracle. As for oracles stronger than sun oracles, they usually only existed in the headquarters of the Directorate of Celestials in the capital city of Deyu. They were all great oracles who never showed themselves, and were equivalent to the strategic forces of the entire Deyu dynasty. As such, they would not easily leave the area of 10 billion miles around Yuxiong Plain, the capital city of Deyu. The few oracles in front of Wuqi, who had 2 to 3 small stars embroidered on their sleeves, were roughly at the level of early-stage nascent soul realm in the peak of Jin Dan realm. They were insignificant figures. Especially before they activated the bone talismans and used the various mystic arts of the human race, these oracles were not much stronger than ordinary mortals. After giving them a cold glance, Wuqi strode up the 36 steps in front of the Directorate of Celestials. It was not until Wuqi reached the top of the steps that a young man with 6 small stars embroidered on his sleeves slowly came out to greet him. Without saying a word, he put his hands under his sleeves and raised them before his face, then bowed slightly and gave Wuqi a somewhat mysterious bow. Wuqi cupped his fist at the young man and looked at him without saying a word. "Welcome, Your Excellency Tan Lang. This way please." The young man squeezed out a smile on his pale face, then spun and walked through the stone door. Wuqi followed behind the young man and strode into the Directorate of Celestials with 6 soldiers transformed from celestial fiend puppets. Walking through a deep and long tunnel, there were only 2 small oil lamps on the walls on the left and right of the huge stone tunnel, emitting a dim light. Therefore, the light in the tunnel was dim. If it were an ordinary person, they wouldn't even be able to clearly see the path ahead of them. The air in the tunnel was heavy and suffocating, as if there were sticky cobwebs drifting in the air, giving one the illusion that they were in an ancient tomb. After walking along the tunnel for several hundred feet, the scene before Wuqi's eyes suddenly opened up. A square hall, nearly 100 feet in both width and length, and 300 feet in height, appeared before him. In the center of the hall was a huge stone brazier, from which a clump of green flame without any heat was spewing out, nearly licking the ceiling of the hall. Vaguely, Wuqi could see countless figures flickering amidst the several tens of feet wide flame. Suddenly, he heard countless whispers coming into his ears, as if the countless souls of the deceased in the flame were telling him something. A strange power surged in the hall. This power did not give people any pressure. Instead, it gave people a soothing feeling, allowing them to relax completely. It was a strange temptation that made people want to sleep peacefully under the cover of this power. It was a strange temptation that made people want to sleep forever. Wuqi could tell that the force was the most mysterious and unpredictable, nether return, in the Tao of ghost and deity taught by Princess Zhanglu. It was a power that only dead ghost and deity could master, a power that belonged to the 9 hells. Wuqi knew that the oracles of the human race could communicate with ghost and deity and borrow the power of e'en ghosts and deities. But, he could not help but marvel at the fact that the oracles of the human race could accumulate such a powerful nether return force in this hall. The various mystic techniques of these oracles had reached an unimaginable level. The nether return force was a power that even gold immortals might not be able to touch, but these oracles of the human race seemed to be able to master it with ease. The walls of the strangely shaped hall were engraved with ancient patterns, all of which depicted the ancient people fighting all kinds of ferocious birds and beasts, as well as ferocious deities and evil ghosts on Pangu continent. Without exception, all the patterns showed that human beings had won in the end. A bloody, primitive, and violent pressure could be sensed from the ancient and thick carvings. Upon hearing Wuqi's footsteps, a handsome and elegant young man, clad in a black robe made of fine linen and a black jade crown on his head, came out from behind a huge brazier in the center of the hall. With a smile on his face, he put his hands under his sleeves and raised them before his face, then bowed slightly to Wuqi. Wuqi cupped his fist and returned the bow. "You Mu, the great oracle of Anlu County's Directorate of Celestials?" he asked in a deep voice. He glanced at the young man's sleeve and saw 3 crescent moons embroidered on it. Clearly, his overall strength had surpassed that of a lower-tier heaven immortal, reaching at least the level of a 27th-tier heaven immortal, or even higher. On top of that, moon oracles were different from star oracles. They had been dealing with the power of ghost and deity for many years, and their bodies had been soaked in the power of ghost and deity, as well as the power of nature. As a result, they possessed certain divine abilities and extraordinary abilities, and were no longer a weak and pitiful mortal body. Any cultivator of Jin Dan realm could kill a 9-star oracle with a sneak attack. However, no celestial immortal could so easily assassinate a moon oracle. The power of Moon Cla's priests was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Moreover, compared to the power of heaven immortals, the power possessed by oracles was much more mysterious, unpredictable, and difficult to guard against. The fact that they were moon oracles was more than enough to make Wu Qi vigilant. Standing in front of the brazier, he smiled faintly and said softly, "I am Yu Mu, the master of Anlu County's Directorate of Celestials." A pale green ghost flame flickered in his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Ever since Anlu County returned to the rule of Diyu, and I was ordered to take charge of Anlu County's Directorate of Celestials, I have been observing everything here. Now, I've chosen General Tan Lang. I'm just a little 100-men lieutenant, not a general yet," said Wu Qi in a deep voice. Yu Mu shook his head with a smile and said, "If General Tan Lang is willing, you will be a general very soon. The latent power of Yu clan in Zhong province is beyond your imagination. With just a word from me, I can make you the general of Anhe City's military court." After a moment of silence, Wu Qi looked at Yu Mu and said, "Wild beasts in the mountains will never make friends with fresh flesh and blood. Yu Mu, what are you trying to do?" Yu Mu smiled satisfyingly, then nodded and said, "You have an excellent aptitude. I heard that you have sensed the power of Pangu without cultivating any cultivation technique. I need an ally like you. Perhaps it won't be long before you possess the strength to stand on equal footing with me. This is not something rare on Pangu continent." He took 2 steps forward and said in a deep voice, "It is always easier for 2 wild beasts to capture prey than one. Become my ally, and control everything in Anhe City. I'll support you to become the general of Anhe City, and I'll support you in your promotion step by step in the future. As long as you support me with all the strength you have, and let me constantly gain benefits, that will be more than enough." After a moment of silence, Wu Qi frowned and asked, "Why did you come to me instead of the criminal officer, Hu Bugue?" Yu Mu remained silent for a while, then said hesitantly, "I sense danger from him. But, I don't sense that from you." Wu Qi's heart gave a slight jerk. Did this Yu Mu actually possess such a powerful divine sense? He could actually sense the presence of danger from Yen Bugue? If not for the fact that Wu Qi had formed his innate chaotic spirit body, which allowed him to transcend the shackles of certain rules and principles, would this fellow be able to sense the anomaly in him as well? As I thought, I really can't underestimate these oracles of Diyu. After a long silence, Wu Qi nodded and said, "All right, since you've given me benefits, I'll give you benefits as well." It's settled then. Everything Wu Qi said and did was exactly the identity he had fabricated for Tan Lang. He was a hunter in the mountains, and that was how it should be. Yu Mu nodded satisfactorily, then chuckled and said, "Since you're willing to form an alliance with me, I'll naturally take care of you when the calamity comes. Your Excellency Tan Lang, you may go now." "When the calamity comes?" What did Yu Mu mean? Wu Qi stood still, frowning at Yu Mu as he cried out rudely, "Since we are allies, make it clear. What calamity? Don't be so wishy-washy here like a sissy." Yu Mu was taken aback, then suddenly burst into laughter again. "You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."